Good morning. I seem to be having dramas. A few tech dramas today. Hang on. Can't seem to go live on Facebook. Hang on. That's all right. Forget it. Looks like it's just going to have to be YouTube and Twitter, I think. Periscope doesn't show up on the chats. Sorry, just give me a second. All the technology's changed, so hang on. Periscope. So Twitter doesn't do chat anymore. So if you want to chat with me, I'm not going to see it. Oh yeah, no, Judith, it's on my end, not yours. So I'm streaming on not Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. But because I was late, because my sound. So I did an interview, panel thing yesterday on cancel culture for Scott Veritas channel, and the problem is that when you go into a Zoom call, you've got to reconfigure all of your settings. And my sound was not working very well. There was an echo and stuff in Zoom. And then now I had to reconfigure it back. And it's just fucking, I hate this stuff. I absolutely hate wrangling with tech. And it's like the worst part of my life. And then I needed to wee 30 seconds before the video started. So then Facebook's for conspiracy theorists and loons anyway. Yeah. It's gone downhill since the good old days, hasn't it? But yes, I'm having a bit of a Monday. Someone's got the case of the Mondays today. But I thought, well, I felt like you know how if you stream, you get to a point where you have that sort of, it's actually very much like exercise. You know, like when you start running and you don't want to do it and you hate it. But then you sort of go, oh shit, when I don't do it, I don't, it's like, I'm not an extrovert at all. I hate this shit. Hang on. Can somebody let me know if my microphone is peaking out? It's Sunday in Canada, Judith, but it's Monday morning here. Just give me 1 second. If you don't mind me tinkering just for a little bit, because sometimes when it's live, it's just, you have some dramas and it's just easier. Yeah, so it does seem a touch loud. Okay, cool. So let me just turn that shit down. Hang on a second. Filters. Hang on 1 sec. I've turned it up too much. So I think that should be better now. My expander's too high. Let's go with that. That should be, is that a bit better? Okay, I think we're not peaking out now, so I think that should be a little better. That's a bit better. Unless I fucking move and then it peaks out again. Hang on, slightly lower. Sorry about this. Thank you for your patience. I just really need to I need to set this so that I've got different profile settings for different things. Hang on 1 sec. We're nearly there. Hang on, let me just yell and see. All right, hang on. I think we're okay now. Let's just put that 0 down. Yeah, let's just do that. I think that should be okay now. I think we're okay. And I'll turn the mic down just a smidge and I think we're in business. There we go. Okay. I think based on the levels, I think we should be okay. Hang on. We do something dumb. My sound good. Hang on, what else have I got? Where's the baby one? Oh, that was the baby. Then I've got laughter. Laughter. I'm such a fucking dickhead. Anyway, so hopefully I've got like all these sounds here, but I haven't quite figured out how to, I've got to set the times and stuff for them to play, but I've got like police sirens, which is fucking ridiculous. It's so silly. I like silly things because it breaks the tension. I think that's the thing about when you talk about things that are quite serious and quite intense and can tend to make your brain scramble a little bit. Like, I think that comic relief is really, really important. Like, I mean, I could, talk about the science of this stuff, but people need I think that a big part of like what technology's done is that it doesn't give you a pressure valve, right? It just makes everyone so, I think that a lot of what sorry, I'm still getting into sort of get my squeaky voice going, my thick, get my inflections. Hang on, I'm just quitting Photoshop. Oh, shit. Hang on. 1 second. Will be charged. Okay, so it is on battery. Okay, so my MacBook battery is dead, and so I need to plug it in. All right. Hang on. So I've just got people now messaging me on fucking Facebook. Hang on a sec. Let me give you. Hang on. Dramas. Hang on. I might actually just switch this out. Hang on a second. I've got to go get my charger from my son. 1 second. My MacBook battery is dead, and OBS drains so much of it when it's plugged into the monitor, it's not charging, so it will run out of battery life. I've got to go and steal my charger back from my kid. Motherfuckers. Okay, I'm going to be back in a sec. Welcome to the Taya Show's Remarkable Fucking Restraint channel on school holiday. Okay, we're back. 1 sec. Okay. I've just had people fucking going, where's your stream? Hang on. It's not showing up. Hang on. Just 1 sec. You're going to have to go on YouTube because I was late. It's been a disaster today. That's all right. It wasn't meant to be anything fancy anyway, but just let me just copy the stream link. Fucking disaster. Thank you for your patience, guys. Be a sec. Okay, copy. It's not even that. I'm glad I don't. You know what? These are the times when I'm very glad that I don't have 1,000 people waiting for me. There you go. So the people that are on there shall see it now. I've linked to the YouTube because there's people who want to see me. Sorry about that. Okay. Now log into Trello. Fucking hell. It's been an absolute disaster. Log in with Atlassian. Oh, because it's all a couple of companies. I don't have a password. I'll continue with Google. I don't know. So this is what I thought I'd do is, sorry, okay, let me just open the chats. Okay, let me just 1 sec. Oh, yeah. So, okay. So the physical act of laughing releases tension, humor or not, yes. Also, like just the psychology of this, which is I'm really interested in, is obviously what I'm really interested in, academically speaking, which one of my things about academia is that it tends to be too narrow and not really focused. Like all these, that's one of my frustrations with, I think, a lot of, I think this is where there's that, the IDW have that, there's a real thought termination that goes on there, where thought experiments have a time and a place. And I think this is very much also linked to where, I think this is where the conversation has to go, which is what's appropriate within the walls of a university, what's appropriate, because traditionally we've had masks, right? And I've gone through this like 27 years. I think about this a lot because writing the book, I think about this, which is that I think I'm 10 years, I've got 10 years on everybody else. And I made a lot of the mistakes when a lot of those mistakes were able to be erased. Thankfully, like when I went viral, when a lot of these things were still fairly new and it kind of disappeared and I kind of got to hide away. But I also had a popular blog when, a really popular blog was like 1,000 a day. It wasn't anything huge. And I had sort of just decided I didn't want that. It wasn't what I wanted. Okay. I saw this early on with, I don't know if people remember clout.com, where you could literally measure your influence with a score. And I had one of the highest ones in this city, and it was weird because I never really cared. It was something that I didn't choose. I'm someone who just influences without seeking influence, and it's very strange. So for me, I've actively tried not to do these things. So because it's just not. I don't think it's important. I don't think that internet influence means anything. And that comes back to my, it seems like I'm not letting it go, but it is actually something that pisses me off, which is this idea that my work is content, or that people's art is content, or that advertising or art or film is content. And I think that they're very different things. Having come out of marketing, it's such a dehumanizing thing to say to somebody who is not trying to sell things and not trying to. It's not attached to number. Content is attached to numbers. Content is something that fills up space. Content is something that converts. And I think that calling something a piece of work that is someone's whole life content is actually inherently dehumanizing, devaluing, and insulting. And especially to have somebody who is not qualified in my field, who makes content, yeah, but, there's a difference between interviewing experts and being one. There's a difference between writing a blog post, like I've said, and writing an essay. There's a difference between writing, a self-published book and a published book that's had an editor and gone through a process. And I think that that's a lot of the stuff. That's the problem that we're sort of working through right now. And that's what I've been thinking about with the book, is that people are confused about. I think I've talked about this in previous streams where I signed up to the internet with a certain set of expectations that haven't really changed, and a whole bunch of other people signed up with a whole bunch of other expectations. That the internet was some place. I thought it was a place to express yourself and to open up opportunities and to have, be free from a lot of the constraints. Like, technology is supposed to enable us and make our lives easier and open up open up the world to us. And yet somehow we've gone there's a whole exodus of people. I joke that, the extroverts crashed the introverts internet, right? And then ruined it. And now, in order to escape the fuckwits, we've got to go offline when we're initially starting, But at the same time, I think there's just some I think people are unclear on what the expectations are. And I think I think most people will, once they know the expectations and they're not constantly changing, and I think tech have built their own parachute on the way down and they haven't figured stuff out. That's entrepreneurship. That's kind of what you do. It's in your DNA. But I think that a lot of people are really confused about, first of all, they think this phenomenon is new. It's not. It happened with the printing press. It happens with every new technology. It happened in the Industrial Revolution, right, at the beginning. But I will talk about the role of humor. But that's where I think everyone's just a little confused and intense, lashing out, traumatized, upset. Now, I was on this video. I'll promote this properly maybe tomorrow on tomorrow's stream. Maybe we should do a watch party. That'd be funny. It's 2 hours long. I talk for 2 hours. No one's shocked. He said, oh, yeah, we'll make it a maximum of 2 hours. And I laughed and I was like, yeah, I'll go for 8. It's just, But it was about cancel culture. And I was supposed to be on a panel with 2 other people and the host, but it ended up just being me, one other person, and the host. And the other person's an anarcho-capitalist. And I again, Americanism aside, but it was actually a very productive conversation, because I think that I don't seek this stuff out. And I was asked to be on it. And it's not something that I'd necessarily do. Like you wouldn't see me trying to, yes, I kind of go, I'm open to being a guest, but I'm very selective about, first of all, where I show up, who I expose myself to, because I don't need the shit. Like, I don't need to be alongside Posey Parker on a fucking right-wing thing. I don't want that. It's just not my crew. Okay. Again, you got to think about the audience that you attract. Now, if you came to me through those guys before, then, I understand. You'll get a small amount of really cool people who might have opened up or expanded their imagination and gone, hey, the left isn't dead, okay? The left has been replaced and kicked out of our own house, right? I've always said this. I'm not politically homeless. I hate that term. No one's politically homeless because your politics is attached to your personality and your values, and your values are your politics, and you can't be homeless unless you're valueless, okay? So if you're politically homeless, I just have a problem inherently with that term because it implies that somehow politics is a club, that politics, it's just a completely wrong-headed idea about politics, which is that it's like a sporting team or a club or parties. Yes, within the system, yes. But even within parties, there's so many different factions and groups and subgroups and subcommittees and all that sort of stuff, right? And so that's the thing that I just find very confusing about the internet is this idea that you are a market. Again, it's market segments. And it's like, hang on, it's really a boneheaded idea of politics for a start. Not how it works. Just on an individual level, your politics is informed by your psychology, okay? And your psychology is informed by your politics. They're kind of one and the same, really. So the way that you are inherently with your personality and, your genes and your personality traits, then how you interface with the world, how you see the world, your experiences, how how you learn and navigate lessons you learn, that largely informs your politics. Okay. So that's why when people go, why can't you have a conversation with the right or have a conversation on these channels? It's not that I think I'm above it or that I just think that they're all wrong that's just a wrong-headed way to approach politics. Okay, I just don't believe in it. I just don't. The constitutions and the way that these systems were designed to begin with didn't recognize party systems, right? And for a good reason, because it wasn't supposed to be that way. And so this is where it's just very strange with these clubs. Anyway, I digress, but people are so intense on the internet, and I find it so weird that people have gone from this entirely optimistic, free, anything is possible internet, where you can be anything you want to be. Like the true dream, the true American dream, the one that they sell you, okay? The true dream. And there's a large portion of people who just don't see the opportunity, and they try to make the internet smaller, and they try to make it's almost like there's an agoraphobic thing that happens with the internet with people who have, like when you go to Subway and they ask you to choose your cheese, and I go, I don't care. I want cheese. It's all plastic. I don't care, right? Or Netflix or Stan or, we've got Stan as a Netflix alternative or Prime or whatever. I can flick through Netflix, Stan, iView. I have BitTorrent. I have the Kodi with, unlimited. I've literally got access to every piece of anything that I want in the whole wide world. And I can't choose anything. And I just want to watch a stand-up comedy thing that I've already seen. And I don't like the familiar. I like the familiar. And I just want, that's an interesting impulse when you apply that to the internet, which is that maybe, yes, we're social beings, but we're also very insular and family oriented, and we like small groups. And I think that that's just a very interesting thing to study. But anyway, people are getting too intense, but that's why people are going to be drawn to cults. But also the role of ridicule, I've talked about this before, the role of ridicule is to just go, fuck it, tell the truth, point it out. Okay, just point it out, and this is something that I keep learning and I keep being punished for, But I keep learning that every single time I have just spoken my mind and I've defended myself, okay, it's usually gone okay. Okay, it's usually gone okay. Not all the time, because I really should have sort of thought better and thought. But if it's something that I really had an issue with or was setting a boundary or the net gain of that is good. And I think the same thing is with a joke. And I'll tell you, sorry, I'm stuttering a bit and I'll get to you. I'm just trying to warm up. But if there's one thing I've learned in my 27, well, years in childhood, but 27 years on the internet, okay, it's that, and this is something that I've had time and time again, and it keeps coming up, because funny thing about writing a book is that things come up like as you're talking and you go, oh, there's a story here. And one of them is that if you say something, there's going to be someone else who feels less alone because of it. Okay. Thanks, Judith. Judith said, stuttering is you. I love it. Yeah, that's the thing. I think everyone can just, that this is why I got so enraged with that snarky comment from Constantine, okay? Which was, first of all, he's never watched any of my content, but all he's done is put me down over the years and going, oh yeah, have you got a book? I said, no, I haven't written it because I haven't got a book deal yet. Because I respect some of these, it's like, no, I don't have that. I can't go and suck the dick of fucking right-wingers because they're going to tell me what to write. Okay? No, I don't. I exist as an example of somebody who works hard and doesn't succeed because of various structural things, like being in Perth, being a woman, okay, being a woman in tech, also sort of being cross-disciplined. People like you to be one thing. That's been something that but because I'm working in an emerging career and I've been building parachute along the way and I've been a crash test dummy. So even with this culture wars thing, I sort of go in and through and then I go and try and report back to everyone else, okay, what do I think is going on here and what's the best way forward, okay? And people don't get that. People don't get sort of what they don't even really know what I do, okay? They don't even know what I don't know what I do. I would say I largely fall under sort of digital strategy, but that's been ruined by fucking grifters. Everything is just I don't have really a sense of I know what I'm interested in and I know what I talk about, but a lot of my work I kind of fit more in the sort of old school thinker rather than the university one narrow thing. Like how it's been sort of siloed. I'm sort of more of a classical thinker where I think about the world and I try to apply all ideas, and that's where the newsletter's coming in. So I'm launching a new newsletter called I Swear It Isn't You, which is basically just going to be a weekly newsletter where I just sort of distill some stuff and go, look, a bit from psychology, a bit from politics. I'm building a glossary on my website with terms and resources and all that sort of stuff. And it's just, people will, and, the influencers, the content people won't get it, okay? I get snark about how I don't have many followers and it's like, no, but I do have 27 years of experience. Video is not my medium. Twitter is insufficient. But I do have a lot of stuff I need to share. Now, when I talk about research interests, I'm very interested in the role of ridicule in fanaticism, in the way that it sort of short circuits that. Now, the psychology, I'm coming back to that comment, right, which is, first of all, I find that people who've lived hard lives, generally have a better sense of humour, okay? They either disappear into God or they have a really dark and dry sense of humour. So I often find that people who have a sense of humour have lived, okay, first of all. Second of all, my light fell over. That's why it looks like shit. My high quality production values. I like the lighting. I like playing with the lights. But anyway, I need to work on my content more than the lights. I just like pretty colours. Anyway, but yeah, so there's a lot of mechanisms at play with just ridicule, right, in terms of power, right? The emperor has no clothes kind of stuff. And that's really kind of, if I had to choose an academic interest, I don't know if I'm going to go down that road. I can't focus on one thing long enough I'm still going to chip away at psychology because I think it's very valuable. And I need something other than tech that worst case scenario, I can go and, listen to people's problems for money, uh, I'd like to, yeah, but I prefer to do consulting and sort of stuff like that. But that's the nature of academia as well, which is that it's so narrow that you get bored. Like, could you imagine? Like, I'm just excited about stuff. I'd like to just go and run a club of ideas, but not just. But the problem is that you have to then have ideas that are acceptable to one particular power center when they're all the same power center, and it's just frustrating, But anyway, so hang on, I'm trying to fucking log into the Trello. Oh my God, what a disaster. Anyway, so so let me have a look. So Dead and the Damned. I'm quite fortunate, to be honest. I developed a very dark and often dry sense of humor as a coping mechanism at a young age. It seems to have helped with the current day nonsense too. Absolutely. And this is, as much as I grew up in a hazing family, right? A family of hazers. And I didn't like it growing up, but I also grew up with a family who would just laugh at everything. Okay? Like, as much as it, again, my sister is kind of a bully, so it's a bit different. There's a limit to it. I had to reel that stuff in, right? Laughing at everything is not really appropriate, but having a sense of perspective, like learning to flip everything into a positive it's a skill, okay? And I think that for me, it was just pure coping. Like I can't even I don't even have any negative memory. It's probably not the healthiest. It's more dissociative shit. But when I was doing some stuff on memory for psych, I didn't realize how many gaps there were and how most of my childhood memories are either just listing facts, like events, like matter of factly, and jokes. I don't have real, and I've got, just matter of fact. And that's what happens. Like when my grandma was sick, or when Paul goes to hospital or something happens, I'm really good when I'm like the best funeral person. I'm like the best person to have around when someone carks it, because I'm just pragmatic brain. I just go pure logic. Bang, 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 bang. I know everything. So when my grandma got a glioblastoma, a GBM4 brain tumor that killed her in 8 weeks, right? The way that I cope, I can look at it now. It's just the way that I do what I do. It's how I respond. I would have been a really good either EMT or like a ED doctor or trauma surgeon if I'd had, a different life. But I would have been I'm really chill under that kind of under major pressure. And so I'm crazy when shit's normal. So I get bored when shit's normal, but there's a certain level of chaos when everyone else is okay. So when everyone else is calm, I'm freaking out. When everyone else is freaking out, I'm the calmest person in the room. Okay. Yeah. But so when my grandma got sick, I just learned everything there was to learn. Like everything. I became an expert in fucking brain tumors. If I get a near-death experience, I learn everything. And that's my way of coping. Like everyone has, their own thing. I also grew up on George Carlin, Billy Connolly. Like Billy Connolly is one of my favorite comedians. Just silliness and ridiculousness and seeing the inherent ridiculousness. My dad was just someone like that. He just didn't give a fuck. And that was great. It used to annoy me that I didn't have a parent. But at the same time, as an adult, you appreciate that gave you a sense of, gave me a sense of the absurd, that not to take things too seriously. And, that sort of Buddhist thing, where everything's sort of temporary and it all passes, and things pass in the moment if you let them, okay? And it's just let it wash over you, rise to the occasion when you need to, but other than that, don't take first of all, don't take yourself too seriously. That's something I've had to work on over the years. Is I was a very intense kid because I was, well beyond my years in terms of like brains, but not stunted in other areas, right? But when you pass it, when you're like labeled as a gifted kid, it's a very strange pressure that people seem to think that you're more, because you got a large vocabulary and that that you can read and that you can meet certain milestones, that you're socially okay, or that you're emotionally sort of in the right place. I think the best thing my mum ever did was not letting them skip me ahead in school, making me do the time, as much as it would frustrate and bore me in school, to the point where I just got lazy. It was just I think that's a better outcome for, I don't know. Anyway, I digressed. So, but yeah, Judith said, my brother has that bizarre sense of humor. There was a wasp in my coffee. I sipped the coffee. Wasp bit my lip. My bro said, stop eating bugs. Yeah, that's just, it's I think it's healthy. And also, if you look at the research and the actual science, so here's some science, is that one of the early signs of like radicalization and fanaticism is that you lose your sense of humor, and that this becomes all consuming, that everything becomes about, an issue, or it's like it's that first sign of sort of fanaticism, is that obsession. Now, another fun thing is that, this idea that the personal is political. The idea that everything is political is actually a totalitarian, that's like an actual like earmark of like fanaticism and totalitarianism. If you don't have a balanced life and your whole life is about, I don't even know if it's about activism, making fun of trans women in beards, if that's your whole reason for getting up in the morning, then I don't think that that's very emotionally healthy, or it's not even intellectually healthy, because I think if you are well read and well educated, you understand that everything is more complicated. Even feminism is more complicated than that. Okay. And that's not, it's just, I think that this is why everyone's too intense, and we've built cults. But I was thinking about this during this conversation, where I was asked about, because we were basically, it's going to be an interesting panel. I think I might be back, because I like to challenge. Like, I don't like to talk. This is where I'm stuck. I hope people don't mind me talking about this, but this is where I'm stuck, which is that I'm pretty much I'm kind of not, I don't want fame. I don't want that. Okay, I'm not interested in that part. I don't want to make my money being a cam girl. I know that. That's just not, I'm not an attention-seeking type. I like to just talk to people and have a conversation, and like YouTube is a mechanism, and live streaming is a way to do that and to reach people with a different medium and different way than I would have, say, 10 years ago with blogging or writing. It's the same thing. It's just something that is necessary. It's a tool. It's not my medium, right? Or my message, or my message even. But where I'm stuck is that the nature of this content factory that we're in at the moment is that in order to get your ideas heard, this is my conflict, that in order to get your ideas heard and in order to challenge this system, okay, of incentive, okay, people who deliberately just stoke the flames of this stuff and escalate things rather than I'm interested in de-escalation. I know that I talk shit and I say stupid things and we joke around and I scream and I rant, but underneath that is a good faith. I'm trying to reach people, but it's also it's quite strategic, but also it's trying to de-radicalize. It's like counter messaging. So in propaganda, you've got propaganda, and then you sort of beat propaganda with counter propaganda. And that's why everyone's confused, because it's just this whole cycle of propaganda, counter propaganda, and all of the stuff. So what I'm trying to do is take what I believe is the cure. Okay, this is where I'm stuck. not stuck. More, it's a situational stuck. I know what I need to do, but it's execution wise, it's tricky. Okay. In this landscape, I'm amazed how many people get 1 million views on YouTube. Just talking shit, but they don't challenge anything. They're just building a tribe. It's amazing to me what shit gets 1 million views, like absolute horse shit. And I'm not saying this isn't horse shit. I'm just saying in general. And this is the tension always, is how do you get the real solutions in front of people? And I'm not saying mine is the only solution. I'm saying the ones that are thought out, the ones that are not motivated by the wrong forces, motivated by money and fame and, this false bullshit influence thing, people, how do you get cut through as someone who is 100% challenging the exact model that you need to use to get your ideas out there? And so this has always been my challenge. And it's like, well, do I go into a university and do a PhD that no one reads? Okay, because no one reads the research. Okay, they refer to the research, but it's usually, I'll tell you now, I've been watching this culture wars YouTube shit. Well, I've been obviously watching YouTube since the beginning, like most of us, but I've been studying the internet for a very long time. And people will generally just go on Wikipedia or they will watch a YouTube video. More and more, they're just watching whatever YouTube videos come up and say nice and they're under 10 minutes and all that sort of stuff. I don't sit in that space. But on the other side, you've got this, I want to do for politics what, those science educators, like what's his name, Bill Nye and Mythbusters and those kinds of guys. What I want to do for politics and civics and philosophy and psychology and just ideas, what those guys do for science to get people interested in stuff. So this is but the problem is that this whole thing is that you just end up being another person with a bunch of rhetoric, with a bunch of fucking dick wavers asking you how much content you produce. It's like, well, no, I don't do content. I'm trying to figure out the best way to get messages out and educate people and teach people in a way that makes them realize that they have the power and that they, for now, have all the power that they need to get involved. And that's what and I said this yesterday in the panel, which was, I said, you'd be surprised how many big decisions are made with 10 people in the room, with the people who showed up. If you just have 5 people show up, you can actually do quite a lot. You can get elected unopposed to most things if you've got 5 votes. I think people, and this is where knowing how the system works is critical. And this is really, what was really interesting about yesterday was that the ANCAP agreed with me. So she supported localism. See, this is the funny thing about Americans is that I'll move. So Judith said, what if you write an article, then read it out loud on YouTube? Yeah, so that is the plan actually. So what I have been doing, again, it's just a lot of work. It's one of those things where it's like you can only do so much for free, but that's okay. I've accepted that. But again, it's not, like I said, it's not so much what to do. I know what to do. I've been doing marketing my whole career. It's more about, it's not what to do as such. I have a plan. It really is just resources and, it's just a matter of execution. It just takes a long time. It's taken me 3 months because I again, a lot of it is me being stubborn as well, which is that when I do my website, I want to build the experience out to be exactly the way that I want it rather than like rely on Substack or rely on these things. So I build them myself with, and I like to control things myself. And that's obviously a lot of work. So, because I'm a bit of a stickler and if I'm going to do it, may as well do it correctly. Now I'm not a perfectionist by any stretch, but things just take more time. I find it funny actually that all these people that claim to be like worried about being cancelled all the time and they've been cancelled and they've been all this stuff, but then they'll sign up without any fucking thought to Substack, which has no API, so you can't even integrate it with a WordPress. So I was actually thinking, because I went to look at Substack and I was like, oh, well, because you've got Medium, right? I actually really like Medium as a product. There was a point where I moved everything over there, but then I went back to WordPress because when the cancellations and stuff started. But at least Medium and WordPress integrate. Everything integrates. So if I post on Medium, I can pull it into WordPress, and if I post on WordPress, I can, pull it into Medium or vice versa. On Substack, there's no API. And so if you're on that platform, you can't. So basically I just decided to set up my WordPress and just, set it up myself with the newsletter plugin. But I can't even push it to Sub. So what I would ordinarily do is put a website in the middle and then like push to Medium. So I post on multiple, you'll see when I post a blog post, I post on my main website, but then I push it to Medium and then I push it to all the various networks. Now Substack, I would have signed up for Substack, but there's no way to do that without manually copying and pasting it every time. And that just becomes a management nightmare. Like even Patreon integrates, even though the plugin is a fucking but either way. Side point. So it's not so much a matter of not knowing what to do. It's the fact that it takes a team. And that's the thing. I think that's the big lie that a lot of these people tell you, which is that a lot of these guys who start their podcasts, right? It's not on $0. It's not with 0 people. It is often off the back of cheap labor, free favors. They call in favors. They, or they just get lucky and they hustle and they earn a lot of money up front, which is unusual. You sink a lot of money into it. It takes 2 years to even, get even close to being in a spot where you're discoverable anyway. All of this stuff, it's not free to produce. It's not free. Like you've got to do your graphic design, you've got to do your branding, you've got to get your content, you've got to do research. And I've been doing this content for 25 years. I've been doing content production. I've been using Photoshop for 27 years. 28 years I've been using Photoshop, okay? I'm pretty quick. I'm a lot faster than other people. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do lighting. I know how to do all this stuff. And it's still like someone goes, oh yeah, you should just do a podcast version. Yeah, that takes an extra hour of my day. Every time I do it, that adds an hour to the workflow. It also means that, there's again, if you're self-hosting and you're doing it yourself, you are either adding cost with a third-party subscription, so Libsyn, Podbean, all those things, they charge money. It's $40 a month. It's another $40 a month. Okay. And then it's another thumbnail. It's a description. It's RSS feeds, all that other stuff. It's admin. Okay. And then I think that it's cool I should just tell people what actually goes into this stuff. It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money for gear, a lot of tinkering. Every time I fucking do an interview or whatever, I change the sound or have to know how audio works. It's thinking about your content. But also if you do an audio version of things, you've got to record it. You've got to edit it. You've got to upload it. You've got to name the file. There's a lot of steps, okay, that people don't realize. And also when it's on a website, if you're hosting audio files, you've got to be on a VPS, at a minimum of a VPS. I happen to be a wholesale host, so I can, I get it at wholesale prices. But for most people, that's a minimum of like $150 a month just for hosting, if you're going to be having video and self-hosted audio. Otherwise, you're relying on third-party platforms, which cost you money and all those sorts of, and there's a trade-off because you're at the mercy of those platforms and all those other things. Same with if I'm trying to write a book, unless you're paid to do it, unless you're paid or sponsored or somehow, it's like it doesn't come out of nowhere. And so I happen to have a lot of production skills and I have a lot more skills than anyone else. I can do everything from design to code to do production. I've done everything in my whole career. But again, these things take time. Editing takes 3 days if you're going to do it well, okay? It takes a long time to get, you got to rewatch things and go back and VFX. That's even without like video effects or sound effects or anything like that. And I think people just, and also then if you're doing things like gaming streams or you're doing anything that requires sort of multimedia, you need to upgrade your gear. Okay, so I was looking into trying to support my son in doing gaming streaming, and that shit, he needs a minimum $3,500 machine to be able to even, the GPU alone, the pressure alone. Like people just don't understand all of the things that go into this stuff. They just think they think it just magically happens. And so, yes, the plan is, no, but he's actually, okay, so Dead and the Dam said gaming streams, no. Now he's actually very funny. So I think he's got a lot of potential. But I'm just saying like, but anything where I think people don't realize how GPU intensive things like this are. Okay. I'm only streaming in, I don't know if I'm doing 1080 or 720. But I'm not doing 4K or anything like that because, you know, I can't even do 4K video on my computer, right? Because of the resource constraints. Because unless you, again, spend $15,000 on the Mac Pro or the iMac Pro, or you have the ability to afford the cutting edge stuff, you're always sort of doing things on a shoestring. And then when you add in the podcast, okay, this isn't me moaning. I'm actually just telling people what this stuff is to think it through. And to empathize a bit more with content. I'm not trying to guilt anyone or anything. I just thought that it was an interesting thing because I've had a few people say, well, you should just do a podcast version of that, or you should do this or do that. And I'm planning to do that, Judith. Yes, I'm doing audio versions of all my blog posts on the new website. So I'll gradually be chipping away at doing that. So I just wanted you to know that that's coming, and it will be an inline player and a podcast feed. But again, I've got to build the technology for that. It's not, because if I rely on Patreon or I rely on one thing, you're always, I like to have full control. It's just when you're in digital, I just, you know, I have this way of wanting to do things the right way, and it ends up being the harder road. But, you know, I like things my own way. And I'm very grateful that I've got sort of, you know, the skills behind me to be able to execute most of this stuff. But it takes time. You know, some things just take time. But yeah, so it's, but then, you know, obviously then you've got to work for free. I homeschool my autistic son. You know, I got, you know, got to do client work. I got to do all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so what was I going to say? Yeah, I think that was it. But it was mostly, yeah, people just don't, I don't think people really, but then that's right. So when with the podcast stuff, it's like, well, okay, am I willing to pay another $50 a month when I've quit? Because I've had to pare down my work, because if client work has it's like a giant rubbish bin. It expands to fit the space that it's in. So if you make yourself available for clients, you know, 6 days a week, they will fill that space. If you are awake 7 days, 24 hours, they will fill that space. That's the nature of business. So what I've done is I've had to go, okay, I was going to quit completely. Okay. Luckily I haven't, because there's been a couple of clients that, first of all, don't want to leave. Second of all, I can't find anyone to replace me. And that will do things to my standard. When I find someone that will do it to my standard, then I'll, you know, but again, so I got, so you've got that. So I've reduced my income substantially, right? Substantially from consulting, to try and get this important information out there, because I'm passionate about education, passionate about this stuff, this teaching this stuff. People might not see it. People might not see the value in it, but I do. I want it out there because one day someone will see the value in it, because I think that I'm correct in my analysis on this stuff. But so I gave up, but then eventually you got to do that trade-off, which is, okay, well, am I going to pay an extra $50 a month for a subscription, a podcast subscription or plug-in or whatever it costs to implement podcast functionality? Am I going to pay that extra $50 a month for 3 people? Again, it becomes a question of scale and volume. And I think that that's another thing that the internet sort of fucked up a bit for us, I think, which was this idea that this is what apps did. I think apps did this, which is that, and stock photos and stock photography and templates and Envato, Envato elements. I mean, I use elements, My icons are from there, okay? I don't design everything from scratch. I'm not a fucking idiot. But stock photography was probably the earliest time I saw this, which was that with clients, they go, oh, well, let's just get this stock photo. And I go, well, or free stock photos. Actually, free stock photos are probably a better example because stock photos have always been around. But the free stock photos where clients would not pay for photography anymore or pay for even big brands. Okay, I worked for a major tech company, okay, like a big one, starts with E, ends in Bay, right? Did some work with them. And even then, they wouldn't sort of justify the budget. And I went and looked for them because on stock photos, if it's got a brand on it, usually it's only an editorial license. Okay, not a used license. But if you own the brand and you own the trademark or whatever, so therefore, if you're the company and that exists, then you have a free-for-all license to use whatever stock photography in any way. It's not just an editorial license. I know this is boring. But even then, so because they had that claim, they could just use whatever was on Google Images with their logo in it, right? It was crazy. But just the average person with photography, they would go and take something like Pexels, okay, or what's the other one? The Raw, what's it called? Whatever. Those free ones. And they'll go, oh yeah, that's enough for my business brand, whatever. But then you look at the image and it appears everywhere. Everyone's using it. And that's the trade-off, which is that you don't have a unique bespoke experience. And everything ends up looking cookie cutter, which is what it is now. Everything's good enough. And people have trouble getting sort of traction. So I've always I'm not a purist when it comes to bespoke. Obviously, if it's a fucking picture of mountains, no one gives a shit, right? But when it comes to using models or people or whatever, you know, this stock photography thing is got a trade-off associated with it. It's the same thing with these apps or with Patreon or with Substack or anything like that. They have a trade-off, which is that you don't have control over the experience. If something goes wrong or it goes down, that's, you know, and again, there's that it's weighing up that. And I just tend to prefer, well, if I can do it myself, then I'll just prefer to do that. But again, there's additional cost with everything. Everything's like cost and balance. And if you're scaling and if you've got 1 million followers, then that you can justify that. You can justify the investment. But so, I mean, a lot of it is more like, well, if I get 1,000 people paying me whatever, then yeah, that'd be great. But at the moment, it's just a handful of people who are very grateful. I'm very grateful. I'm just actually explaining, this is the life for every creator. But I don't talk about it because everyone's all too busy pretending that they're successful and pretending that it's actually a straightforward thing where you can just go onto Squarespace or Wix or everything is just easy. And it's like, well, no, but there's a trade-off, which is that you end up in a situation where we're under surveillance and they have your data and they have control and all those things. I fight that. I try not to be part of the system that I'm fighting, and that's all. So I try to stay independent as much as possible. And, you know, there's a cost associated with that, which is independent thought. You get penalized, okay, because this is where I know where all the incentives are, which is to either go fully woke and build that fucking tribe or go fully like, you know, I love what Mark Maron calls, was it the monolith, was it the monoculture of free thinkers? Joe Rogan's audience, the monoculture of free thinkers. Yes, yeah. And I mean, yeah, and then you got the Dave Rubin crew who's, you know, and then you've got and Dave Rubin is basically just amping up this cancel culture thing because he's got locals. He wants to sell his own product. You know, they've all got their own. Isn't it funny how they've all got their own like things to sell? Okay, and that's the problem. And that's when I talk about how I know what I need to do. I know what I should do. It's not so much that I don't know what I need to do or what I should do. It's more about which devil I'm willing to do a deal with, if that makes sense. Because this stuff is sort of, a horse is bolted on this pure sort of tech stuff. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, again, it just becomes a balance. Like when you've got, I think like anything, if you can make the business case for it. If I had 1,000 people saying, yeah, I'll download your podcast, then I would do it because it's 1,000 people. But we're really talking about small numbers at this point. And so unless there's sort of an injection or an investment or something or a book deal or someone, it's all out of my own pocket. Everything I've done here is out of my own pocket, except for, obviously the handful of very generous and kind people who support me. And 2 of them are here today. Thank you very much. But it's, again, sorry, I know I've sort of rambled, but I've been thinking about this stuff. And I think a lot of people aren't really, I think that a lot of this is also part of this idea. And believe it or not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to agree with Gary Vee, of all people. Gary Vee is an interesting figure because Gary Vee's followers make it set, and all these, like, a lot of this stuff comes from hustle culture. Like that's what I like with Rogan. All these grifter, they're all hustle people, right? They all think that if they get successful, that it's because they are there for merit and hustle and all that shit, right? Hustle bros. I've got a parody Twitter account of like Thad who pretends to be a really Gary Vaynerchuk. Okay, he's a marketing business guru, and he does a lot of like stuff, and he's got this little weird business cult of bros. So if you hear all the hustle and merit and 10x and all this shit, all those business guru types, he's kind of one of the early guys of that. And he's built a tribe underneath him of fuckwits. But if you actually listen to what he's got to say, he's actually correct, which is that, see, they take it as everyone who hustles succeeds. And he's more like, no, business isn't for everybody. You got to fucking get your head straight. You got to think clearly. A lot of people have the idea of business is more appealing than the reality of business, which is that it's a grind, it's expensive. It takes all of your energy and resources. I've done 3 startups, and 3 of those have 2 have failed miserably, and 1 succeeded, but it got so and that was the agency. It was doing well, but I was doing work that I hated. I was selling my soul, so I closed that down. I haven't found a business formula because I was trying to do all this stuff like 4-day work week, ethical business, and you fail. You try to do ethics and you fail. And the other 2 were just sort of, not the right timing and, various other things. But I've done several startups, several new tech things, as has Paul. Paul's done everything from like coffee carts to apps to, he's always been building stuff. He's always got new ideas. And, a lot of it, we're both that way. But there's a lot of people, and this is the thing that I think that, I know that it seems like a tangent, but it's not, which is that with these websites and apps and Canva, stock photography, it's ultimately a lot of it is about shortcuts to riches. A lot of it is ultimately about getting rich quick somehow, or finding some sort of loophole or gap in the system to exploit for your own personal gain. And there's not a lot of people talking about the internet in terms of it being, it's not just about security exploits in terms of software, but it's exploit in terms of process and systems culturally. It's a political exploit as well, and it's an economic exploit, which is, this idea that it's selling people en masse. And this was my problem as a web designer and UX designer, around 2009, when websites started to become sort of assembly, like Wix and Squarespace and, those sorts of things. This was more like 2015 when they came out, but, I'm saying I saw this early again, like I always do. I always end up being right. That's why I'm confident that I know that if I do this, I'm on record, I will be right because I do my work. But what it did was it instantly devalued my work. It instantly, and again, that's the nature of disruption. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, well, we disrupt. And it's okay to disrupt in business if you're providing a better service for the customer or something's easier, and that's competitive. But if you're actually just like with big tech, if you're South Park did that really cool episode about the scooters being left everywhere. But if you're creating a product that it's not innovative and it's disruptive but in a way that it's sort of, it has a social consequence to it that people ignore because it is disruptive in other areas. And that's what happened with tech, which was that, Squarespace, Wix, Canva, stock photography, all these types of platforms or apps. A good example is the apps that build apps. Okay, so normally to build like an iPhone app and an Android version of that app, you're looking at $250,000. Okay, that's for development. It's very complex, and also it's a lot of work. But and then someone built an app to build apps, and what they did was they promised it for like $2,000 or $3,000, right? But it's cookie cutter and it gets the same, and they all look the same, and you put your own header and you put your own color scheme and all that, but you don't have, you don't have a control over the experience, and you don't get to innovate. So what these disruptors do is they kind of innovate away innovation in a weird sort of way. And that's what's happened, is that it's been chipped away at, like with the web design business. Like I used to be able to create so much cool shit. I remember having so much fun with like all of this stuff. And eventually it just became like, I basically assemble IKEA furniture, and people won't pay like for professional shit anymore. Like people balk at my hourly rate, and I'm like, well, that's my rate. Isn't it funny though, how people who are like so pro capitalism, when you say my hourly rate is X, they're the first people to go, nah. And I go, well, that's what I'm worth. I have to live under your system. That's what you pay to get me. Don't negotiate on my rates, right? And they don't like that. Yeah. So the Tesla thing is and again, I don't know whether we're just in the middle of something, and it people will sort of dial it back. But this innovation, disruption for disruption's sake, has always concerned me, because it's kind of like there's an attitude there which is like, well, I don't have to operate within society. You know what I mean? Like this is what happened with Facebook and Twitter and Google. They're not accountable to anybody. They're a law unto themselves. But that is like that's like endemic in tech, because they don't respect. They already think that they're innovating, they're disrupting, they know better. Okay, they have a blind spot. They're idealists, right? So in the early days, but also they don't realize that they were probably a strategic asset. So if their tech was of use to power, then it was succeeded. Facebook was, largely funded by the fucking government. The internet was started out as ARPANET, was the Department of Defense. Again, these things are all, compromised. But like I don't know. I just have a problem with this whole thing. Anyway, but again, it's about the incentives. So so Gary V basically was just like, reel it in. Like business isn't for everybody. You shouldn't do this. But then you've got people in tech saying, well, you can just do whatever you want to do. Fuck those guys who tell you can't. They're old boomers, right? Fuck the boomers. Fuck the Gen Xers who actually worked hard and built skills and, learned how to code from scratch. Like I can always code from scratch. That's great, right? I can design, I can build. I don't build icons, but I can if I have to. See, and it's like people who buy ready-made meals and never know how to cook. It's the same sort of idea. But this is sort of I think this is sort of I'm just thinking on the fly here. This is sort of the problem just in general, which is this idea that things are easy. Politics is easy. That living together is easy. Being a human and living is easy. It's not easy. Being alive is hard and messy. And being alive with another human is hard and messy. Being alive with more than one other human is there's a multiplier on that. But it's the same thing. Like it's bizarre. Again, I think America. Again, it's sort of more pervasive there. But again, Western we're all downwind from this shit. But packaging things up as simple that are actually incredibly complex, and then selling it back to you a shitter version of what it was, like whatever brand of politics is fucking coming out of there right now is not the politics that I know of. But it's just this sort of weird focus on optics and influence and fame and veneer and superficiality over just this, being able to just sit and think and take time and create and not be producing but be creating. And they're very different things. Because when you're a creative person, it's very different from being someone who produces content, okay, versus thinking and being creative. And so when I talk about my frustrations about this stuff, that's what I mean, is that I'm trying to find that sort of voice and middle ground between, again, if I was paid to do this shit, it would be streamlined. I'd have a team and be all that stuff. But I don't have that. I do what I can do in any given day. It's interesting that people don't see this as inherently valuable. They don't see the process of writing a book as inherently valuable. They don't see my blog posts as valuable. And it's interesting to see how much has changed in 10 years, like since that people don't they don't value thought anymore. It's about content and it's something for consumption. And yes, that's the nature of the beast, but I think it's also something that's disappointing. It's disappointing that people would rather go and watch a 2-minute video on Marx than see it for its own inherent worth. And I'm not saying I'm Marx. I'm just saying. It's sad for humanity that people don't want to go deeper anymore, and that this superficial stuff is enough for people, and that they genuinely see likes, retweets, Instagram influencers as anything but it's revolting. I hate that shit. No, who would want that? Like that's a terrible life. And it's just I find, but they consider that to be influence rather than people who think and have conversations. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, which is like there's a difference between an Instagram influencer with 100 likes, or 1,000 likes, or 1 million likes, and someone who can get a phone call with somebody or see anyone and network and have an idea. So the Dead and the Damned said, I think it's just an overload of potential. There's so much available people. They think they need to consume as much as possible yeah. And that's the problem. But I think that's the same thing with dating. It's applied to dating. It's applied to everything, which is that I think that mindset is concerning. Like even with getting to know somebody, everything is, and I know, oh God, I sound 1,000,000 fucking years old. I set the toast 2 to 3, medium brown. But in my day, but look, I come from the 80s. I'm an 80s kid, right? The first generation to have really super disposable shit. And even I think that everything is way too disposable. But we've gone from things being disposable to people being disposable. I mean, they've always been disposable in war, but just generally speaking, the general population going, like friendships are not valuable. They're disposable and conditional. Like ideas are disposable. Like it's dating. If you don't feel it in the first 5 minutes, it's like, that's interesting, isn't it? Because most people actually end up with people they've spent more time with, right? That's the familiarity actually is one of those things where you're more likely to get to know somebody and more likely to the proximity effect, right? And I find it just very interesting I think that's really, I mean, again, when you scratch the surface, it's like, yeah, everyone's getting ADHD. Everyone's got no attention span. Ha, ha, ha. Edit your videos to 10 minutes, Taya. Nah. Do Do you know why? Because I also believe that this is sort of a resistance to that stuff and that thinking, which is that everything is disposable and that everything is easy and fast and that there's not a process for things. Like even when it comes to law, there's a process. There's things that take time. And it's the same thing with politics, which is that some of the issues that are having religious wars around them right now, they're sort of emerging issues, and there's going to be a process. It takes time to get through the courts. And it's very strange to see that it's just fast fashion, fast information, junk food, wish.com fucking philosophy. I'm not saying it's out of China. I'm saying it's, cheap and nasty. Dare I say it's drop-shipped ideas. There's a word. Let's coin that. Drop-shipping of ideas. They're just repackaging and borrowing something, rebadging it as their own and selling it. And that's something that, again, uniquely American, where they'll say, oh, yeah, I always joke about Shoshana Zuboff's, I call it surveillance capitalism. And I said, everyone else calls it capitalism. It's like, the Americans love coining terms that already exist. I call it fooswazzles. Well, that's a fridge. Everyone else calls it fucking this, all right? Oh, my God. It's like, no, you haven't coined a term. You're just repurposing it and reselling it back in a shitter version. Drop shipping. There's a drop shipping mindset. Actually, I should write that down. I came up with that. I should write that down. Remember, drop shipping is where you buy OEM like products without stuff on it, and then you badge it yourself. Or sorry, no, that's different. That's OEM stuff. Drop shipping is where you don't even you don't produce it, you don't hold the inventory, you don't even buy it wholesale, you don't store any of it. You just sell it, and then it gets shipped directly from the warehouse to wherever the customer is, and you don't even touch it. That's drop shipping. So, and that applies to ideas online as well, which is that there's a whole bunch of people that are sort of drop shipping philosophy and just passing it on and laundering it, and then and then claiming credit and scraping off the top. I mean, Tim Pool just basically profits off reading the daily news and ranting about shit he has no understanding of. I mean, his coverage of Australia has really shown it. But Dead in the Dam said, we're also seeing a sort of split now, I think, a group who can only get into long form and a group who can only absorb meme-style content. Well, yeah, and that comes back to what I was saying about the tension, because when you're going through this, as I am, which is that I don't want to write long-form content, okay, because I don't care about – it's not an elite thing. I like being accessible and funny, and I think more people – just need to know how the voting system works, or how committees work, or how facilitation works, or what consensus is. And, like I said, building a glossary with just images and videos and resources and, all that sort of stuff in an entertaining way. I mean, what I've mentioned Jess Taylor before, but what she does around trauma-informed therapy is going to be extraordinary, but she makes that accessible. Now, the snooty cunts in academia and psychology don't like, they look down their nose at her because she's, all, working class and all that sort of stuff. But she's effective, and I really like that. I like that that approach, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that in policy and politics. That said, it might just mean I have to stop swearing. Because, I try to reach a certain audience, but there's some, again, you got to, when I said about the trade-offs, it's not about whether you make any at all. It's about which ones you make at the end of the day. That's what the seagull's on. I don't know why. But honestly, I just think that it is really hard to get cut through. But it is also, to get cut through, you need resources, and to produce content takes time and money and editing and expertise, unless you produce generic bullshit Canva style content, which is kind of feeding the beast that you're trying to go up against. So then if you do get successful from it, people will go, but it's Canva, and you're criticizing it, right? And it's like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's constant tension and constant balance of trying to, I'll crack it. I always have. I've always, like I said, I've always just been ahead and trying to solve these problems because I can solve these problems for others as well. I tend to pass on my knowledge. It's why I never make any fucking money, right? But yeah. So sorry, I just had a text pop up. But going back to you can only do what you can do in a day, and not everyone is able to do this stuff for free like me. And honestly, it's just, yeah. Well, that was actually, so Dead and the Dam said, don't stop swearing. Also use the C word more as it generally upsets all the right people. It upsets all the right people. Absolutely, without a doubt. I agree. That's generally been part of my strategy. I'm not saying stop swearing completely. I'm saying, have some sort of PG friendly, like G friendly content, just because the educational content needs to be over here. And again, it's just finding that, because I can straddle both worlds. It's not really an issue. The main reason that I swear is because of the stutter, and it covers a stutter, or it's effective. If I write it down, it's effective. If it's in conversation and slipping out, sometimes it might be covering a stutter, or deliberate, but it depends. You can tell. But yeah, I find this really, it's just a lot of this time, I just sit and think, and I go, how are we here? And I hope the panel went well yesterday. I'm hoping that conversation, usually I think that I did really badly, and then it comes out and it's actually okay. Because I just feel like I talk too much about boring shit. But what I think is boring, other people seem to find like interesting. And I did challenge this. I challenged the notion of cancel culture, mostly because it's not new. I just see it as an abuse of power by the same old bullshit. It's just a new weapon that's used to, no one's talking about at-will employment or healthcare, or if you meet people's basic needs, then maybe they might be a little less angry and a little less inclined to, do retributive justice over, because they're desperate and dispossessed and feeling angry at the world. And, I think that if you look after people's basic needs, they're more inclined to be more, again, this is psychology theory. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, it might not be, again, this is this whole notion that an idea can be wrong because it was challenged, but the science is proving actually that Maslow had a point. The science proves that Freud had a point, okay? They might not have been ideal at the time, and there might be other ideas, but that's the beauty of things like fMRIs. That's the beauty of, testing things and experimental psychology, even though I don't want to do that because it's boring as fuck. But the body of work is proving that Maslow's hierarchy basically is backed in science, and that this whole thing is easily explained by a lot of like rational choice theory. It's like we're social beings. Most of our choices are a combination of emotions, and we have feelings first and we rationalize later. Anyone who claims to be rational, this is that thing about rationality. Yes, we can try to be as balanced as possible, but I would never tell you that I'm rational. I'd say that I have very strong biases, but that's based on my experience. But that's where, like, because I grew up in a certain situation and certain environment and certain country, certain sex, all that sort of stuff. I'm the culmination of my experiences, and other people are the culmination of theirs. But I do think that you can use it to rationalize being like hateful and bitter, or you can use it to rationalize being kinder and better. And I try to do like the latter as best as I can. But that's post hoc rationalization. Like I'm the queen of rationalization. If I've made my mind up and want something to happen, I can make it so. Okay. And especially if I'm angry or wanting to be spiteful, you'd be surprised the logic that comes out of my mouth is a weapon. Okay. If I'm out for blood, then, I'll find a way. Doesn't mean that it's right. It means that I managed to rationalize it. And I think that that's what we're seeing is this, this is why this race, this sort of, the IDW race stuff and the anti-vax just asking questions stuff. I have a more complicated view on it. Same with censorship. I think in principle, like I said, ideology is more, let's replace ideology with ideals, okay? And I think that can shift your thinking because all ideologies have an ideal attached to them, but they're never, ideals are ideals for a reason. They're not going to be there. Also, other people have different ideals to you. Some people believe I believe that this capitalist utopia where everyone has rational choice is largely debunked by science, okay? What's interesting is that a lot of the psychological science is proving Marx correct, which I find quite fascinating, is that there's some scientific validation for Marxism if you take the time to understand it. Because it was very much based on this sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that people's basic needs being met allows them to, be happy and productive and self-actualize and all that stuff. Yes, certain jobs need to be done and they would be. But they'd be paid appropriately and awarded in line with the value in the economy, not so much. So in terms of the importance of their work, right? Bullshit Jobs by David Grieber. I've talked about it a lot. I'm going to start actually with the newsletter. Patrons are actually will already be able to. I'm actually also again creating work for myself. Patrons will be able to just log in and you'll be a member of the website. So you'll just be able to authenticate and you'll have the subscription. If you, it would be cool if you'd move over there, but because it just means I don't have to double send. But I can, let me know your preference. But with the newsletter, it will be basically, I'll sort of talk a little bit about books that I've read, recommend them, all of that sort of stuff. Just sort of bring some of this thinking together and just make you feel a little more reassurance that it's not the world. The world's not going crazy. The world's being the world. There's nothing new in any of this stuff. And that was sort of what I tried to articulate in the panel yesterday, which is that like cancel culture means lots of different things, but it's become this weird catch-all that's sort of co-opted by the right and also co-opted by the privileged, okay? Like on one hand, I can think that cancel culture and mob rule is a problem. Like that's mob rule, okay? I also think that cyberbullying is a problem. I also think that's always been a problem. Like I said, if this was a new, I've been cancelled fucking so many times since 1994, on an almost weekly basis, depending on some people's definition of cancellation. I think, but that's just cyber harassment and cyber bullying, separate things. And if you look at, again, they've got different psychologies. But if you actually look at cancel culture, so you've got, or you've got employers' abuse of power. So like Frederick Joseph thing, the employer's not off the hook for firing someone based on a fucking internet fuckwit, okay? And this is the thing where it's like, okay, well, why is the employer able to write into a contract that you're not allowed to have thoughts and opinions of your own on? I'm sorry, but this is a workers' rights issue. This is an unfair dismissal. This is, all these other issues. But if it becomes, oh, well, I can't mouth off and say whatever I want in the workplace all of a sudden, you can't even pinch asses anymore without fucking bitches getting lippy and cancelling you, well, then I'm sorry, but I think that's funny. You see, like I think that the problem, again, this catch-all simplistic thing called cancel culture, and this is what I was saying, I'm charitable to the left people who say that it doesn't exist. I think that's a disingenuous view as well, because that's sort of a stop hitting yourself narrative, which is a bully. Like bullies will take this and use the sort of stop punching yourself narrative as well. Cancel culture doesn't technically exist. Yes, it is. I think it's largely weaponized by the right, okay? It's not a new culture. It's not cancel culture. What it is it's a number of systemic issues that no one talks about, okay? The behavior is not, no. So Judith said the behavior is not new behavior. Bullying, icing someone out, sending someone to Coventry, exile from one's country. Exactly. And this is just sort of the internet powers. This is why I'm getting sick of the fucking TERFs. I'm sick of the gender criticals. They've done it again today, which is to pile on like someone who just disagreed and said, I don't think self-ID. And honestly, I'm shifting my view a little bit on this. And someone's like, oh yeah, why is it fucking about toilets? I agree on the toilet thing. Yeah. And then they pile on, they screenshot, they harass, and they bully. And I'm sorry, but that's bullying. And it's like the same bullying that I've received over the years from women for all sorts of things. And it's the same bullies and the same fucking psychology. And so for me, and I know it's because, you know, I have that psychology bias and the political bias, but at the same time, it's certain personality types, certain psych profiles that are drawn into certain behaviors, and they found a way to get together on the internet, and they're more dangerous and they're amplified. It's a matter of volume and scale and being, you know, the KKK can find each other, fucking, you know, the cunt of the mothers group can find all the other cunts of the mothers group. The militant fucking breastfeeding lobbyist can find the other militant breastfeeding lobbyist, you know, like that. And again, that's going to happen. I think that the thing is that's going to happen. I think that's actually just the trade-off of having the internet. But at the same time, and this is where the view on censorship becomes a bit more problematic, because there are people that get caught in the net, like kids and, people who don't have their faculties, people who are going through like life crises, people who are vulnerable to this stuff will sort of gravitate towards these groups. And so Judith said, I'm sick of them too. And it's got nothing to do with the issue for me. Like, I entered this in good faith. I still see the gap, and the conversation needs to be had when the policy is happening. But this is a crackhead fucking marriage. And what they do is, I've noticed it. There's the handful. Okay. So there's the handful of like genuine, I think, good faith people. You got, Julie Bindel, Jane Claire Jones, a handful of other people that I can think of who are actually Kathleen Stock and all that. All of them have been fucking targeted by this mob too, okay? And that's good faith. And they were the people that kind of won me over, right? Which was the argument and the policy gap and all that sort of stuff. But then over time I saw that there was like new ones coming all the time, and they'd get this same fucking turf bomb. It is the love bomb, right? A virtual love bomb. And I don't know whether it's synthetic or not. We don't know. I think I would assume that, yes, in any highly divisive situation where there's two sides, there's likely astroturfing on both sides, right? But again, it just attracts people who just like the fight, and they're not interested in the Barbara Kay. There's a handful of people, but then there's the handful of people who get cancelled or singled out. Okay, so they get fired. They get elevated to celebrity status. Okay, they get martyred, and then they become sort of larger than life, holier than thou, fucking internet influencers, celebrities. Now you then get to choose your journey. Okay, are you going to do everything we say all of the time? And not stutter, not be a human. You must be a full-time fucking activist on only this issue. And if you don't participate in our dog piles or call it out in any way, we will do it to you, okay? That's no different to the fucking woke people. That's no different. It's the same psychology. Different issue, same psychology. MAGAs are the same. Like, it's the thing is, like I said, focusing on the systems and the tactics and who benefits. And the similarities is more important, because I think you find a better story from similarities and the gaps, what they've got in common, than what where the differences are, because it's the differences that are actually the market segment tool. But the overall thing is this whole economy around politics that is superficial, simplistic, aggressive, incentivized for the worst people to earn money. Now, again, I'm not saying that the people who do it are grifters. Again, I find it interesting, the kind of things that become commonplace accusations because they're often projections on the other side, but everyone's doing it. Yeah. Like cult, grifter, all those sorts of things. They're all cults. They're all grifters, okay? But the problem is that the good faith argument gets lost in it. But also that anyone who sees it for what it is. Not many people do see it for what it is, but if anyone dives into this and goes, fuck, that's too much, I'm not getting involved, what that does is affirms their belief that you're somehow persecuting them or somehow, I think anybody in policy or in politics or who has good faith, who is in their right fucking mind, wouldn't touch this stuff with a barge pole. If I was a member of parliament, I would pass the legislation and go, let the courts figure this out on a case by case. Too fucking hard. I'm not touching it. That's as a strategy, as a political strategy, I'd go fuck it. So what you're doing is by poisoning and making this debate angry and aggressive and making it about both sides rather than trying to reach consensus is that you end up left out of the room. You have left out of the conversation and you end up with worse law. Because if you actually, and this is the role of politeness, and it's not about being kind or gaslighting, it's about how people respond when people are screaming in their face. Okay? People don't like it, which is that if you actually go to a meeting and you treat people with kindness and you meet people and you treat people the way that you'd like to be treated, okay? Which I think that on some level, a lot of them are treating people like they'd like to be treated because then you get to be a victim and a martyr and make excuses and say, well, I haven't succeeded in my career because I'm gender critical. I haven't done this because I'm this. I haven't, the only way that I can actually get, and this is that victim mentality again. Now, I'm not saying people aren't victims. I was saying earlier before, yes, structurally, I'm an example of someone who all the work and merit and thought and hard work in the world, sometimes you just don't make it because of various structural factors. But at the same time, people who thrive on victimhood, right? Again, when you know all of these, like with Marxism and capitalism, it's obvious that there are people who they're using their own rationalizations. It's back to rationalizations. Capitalism rationalizes the exploitation of other people. Okay, I said this on Twitter this morning, which is that the reason why people are drawn to will defend capitalism is because they don't have to look at how they relate to other people or how they treat other people within that framework. That framework, that ideology gives them permission to do things that deep down they may not, they may feel guilty about. Marxism, same thing, which deep down it gives you that enemy. Like I use Marxist analysis different. When I try not to say I'm a Marxist, much like Marx said, but I use Marxist framework because I think he's actually correct. It's like saying, well, Darwin, it's like evolution. It's like, okay, it's the same. It's like, it's not an ideology. But people will use an ideology to rationalize all of the like social justice shit or postmodernism to rationalize why they're not, everyone will use everything to demonize others. I'd prefer to use ideology to rationalize, kindness and compassion and getting along, which is why I don't inherently get along with capitalism because I end up under capitalism. I end up someone who gets exploited because I'm a nice person and I give in and I don't charge enough and I take shit from people. Of course, I'm not going to like capitalism because I'm the kind of personality that's softer and I like to be more collaborative and more that sort of stuff. It's not about, it's just people don't understand politics. Like I said, it's not a coincidence that there's no real political people. It's all just high school graduates, models, comedians and fucking, mathematicians and there's no real political scientists in this conversation. Right. Yeah. So the dead and the damned. Yeah. So Judah said many are grift. Yeah. But also what I've actually noticed is that there was a time where people were starting to throw money at me conditionally if I would say what they want me to say. And then, I've lost patrons when I started to, I won patrons when I went with turf shit, then they took it away. And it's like, oh, I don't care about that stuff. Right. I appreciate the money, but I would like it if, like I said, I want the people who fuck this up to pay me. I don't want everyday people to be cheering me on as some sort of leader, because I don't want to lead. I'm not interested in that stuff. I'm trying to hold leaders to account and get them to do the job and them to pay me because, they fuck things up. But it's there's a clear incentive there to say whatever the fuck you need to say in order to get rich. It's a get rich quick scheme a lot of the time, okay? And again, that could be me rationalizing that maybe I just don't cut it. Maybe I'm just a terrible person. Maybe I am stupid. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about and what I say is, unreasonable or whatever. But I haven't ever, the only time I've been suspended from Twitter was for a joke. And that was a 12-hour suspension. I have never had any issues. They got rid of my developer account, but I think that's based on like account health, because at some point, like you become a target, whatever, by crazies and stuff. But, in most cases, I keep my nose clean. I say what needs to be said, but I don't conduct myself in any way other than being a little bit fucking impolite and truthful, or what I see as truthful. So Dead and the Dam said, to an extent, the difference between true believers and grifters is meaningless. Both can move the needle just as well, so the real world impact is just as bad either way. That is true, absolutely. And but the difference between that and I suppose that's the thing. It's not, but neither of them are benign, right? Even if you're a true believer. But if you're a true believer, I can understand it. But also I think that if you're a true believer, I'm not so sure that you would feel comfortable monetizing something that's a deeply held belief. And I'm imposing my values. People have to make a living, okay? I get it. But I don't know. It feels so impossible to get, as somebody who has always been 5 steps ahead of the internet and sort of, I saw the opportunities there. Like, I've had influence. I've been offered things. I've been offered, all these things over the years, but they haven't been on the right terms. And I don't want fame. I see exposure as necessary to get ideas out. It's actually the thing that I hate doing. Like, even this, I enjoy talking and this sort of stuff. I feel better about it now that I've got the skills and I feel more comfortable, but I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do camera stuff. I avoided it for so long. Even when there was a point where I was, asked to be on TV for a few things, and the few times I was on TV, I didn't go so well. I was on there's a show called The Drum in Australia on ABC, and I was asked to, this was 2011, and they were thinking of doing a new segment on social media and what was happening, and I fucking I didn't do it. I did it once, and it was embarrassing because I wasn't comfortable on camera, and I turned up, and they put me with these 21-year-olds, and they went, "Okay, off you go," and I went, "What? You're the producer. You're supposed to be telling me what I'm supposed to say," and then they were like, "Oh, just say what's happened." I went, "But I've been given no brief." So of course I had to wing it, and I put lights in my face and the camera. I didn't do any makeup or anything and that was my experience. And I was on the drum, and it was embarrassing. And then I've been on, and then there's a few things where I've had the opportunity to be on TV, and it's not something that it wasn't something I realized that I had to get comfortable with the camera before I could get my ideas out. And then what I would do is approach the TV. Problem is that I became a TERF in the meantime, so I can't use that opportunity anymore. But it's not that I don't know these things, and that's what I find very bizarre, is that people put so much emphasis on these things, but it's not really where you need to. But in this world where everything is about how many people watch you, rather than the actual quality of your ideas. And I've had people steal my shit and put it on their videos, repeat it as though it's theirs, and I've watched it just go bang, 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 bang all the way through, right? The culture wars, and it's like, well, okay, interesting. Thanks for giving me the credit, guys. Awesome. And thank you for completely butchering the whole fucking thing as well. And that's where I was like, oh, yeah, well, I should probably start actually claiming and writing things down, not just saying things in conversation. And that was something that's always happened, is that I was always kind of amused because of my fear of TV and fear of the camera, and like never having time to write things down, which was that I'd say things in meetings or in conversations, or, you know, like in back and forth, and then next minute that person has fucking run off with my stuff and has started making money off of it. So that was when I realized that I needed to start being on the record. But I don't like this shit. It's not my strength. You know, it's yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but in terms of grifting, I'm just not really. I know, other than, like I've said before, other than the need to live, it's not really something that motivates me, because if I wanted to make money, I'd just sell my shit as a consultant and go, yep, okay. You know, I'll just go back to not doing this, because this is the worst way to make money. Why would you do it unless you were somebody who was there's something inherent in putting yourself out. I think I've just been, again, I'm not claiming victimhood, but I can see how I got caught up in it, because it was just a kind of a perfect storm, because I got the pancreatitis, right? And I live with that. I've got a bit of pain at the moment, actually, but I had a very acute pancreatitis that nearly killed me, like in 2019, yeah, something like that. And have you been around that long, Judith? Far out, that's crazy. No, but because it was a perfect storm, because I'd been on bed rest, and I got to that point with, I was stuck. I was on my ass for 3 months. I was in pain. I was on morphine. So, well, I wouldn't say I'm an introvert. Yeah, probably. It depends on your definition. In terms of energy, I'm social, and I'm an extrovert. Okay, so I'm sort of extroverted to a point, sort of like ambivert, really. It depends. Once I get going, you can't shut me up. But I'm generally fairly introverted and fairly yeah. Well, I test as an INFP, if that means anything. Yeah, it depends. And again, I think that's a scale, and it's contextual. So, I play an extrovert on the internet. But I'm in real life, you know, like, this is draining. But what was I going to say? Can't remember. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think once you get to a certain age, so Judith said I'm introvert with extrovert skills. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that because I was introverted, I have developed skills over the years. And because when you're in business, you've got to do sales, you've got to do all of this stuff, you've got to have meetings. You end up that's like muscle. It's a skill, you know. In terms of my baseline, yeah, probably introverted. But also I can also say that I'm probably more extroverted, whose baseline, who has been bullied and suppressed. So it's kind of a complicated mix, because a lot of this stuff is probably more environmental than anything. I like people. I love people. I've just never really, yeah, it's different. So anyway, but I'm not shy. I can own a room. I'm outgoing, right? If I walk into a room, everyone knows I'm there. But yeah, that's not necessarily introversion or extroversion. But yeah, I probably introverted. But in terms of like YouTube, I was just I'd been watching a lot of this stuff, and I was confused, and I'd realized that, you know, if I was going to start getting any of my work out, or thinking work, or anything like that, that I'm going to have to, because I think it was like the third time, because I'd been actually, no, this is what happened. I'd been asked to give a speech. I'd been asked to give 2 speeches, actually. One speech, another. And then I was asked, I think I was up for a thing on The Project, which is a big thing in Australia, on sort of a nightly show. And I was going to do like a segment or be on there as a commentator. There was a few things that and I realized that I was turning stuff down, not because I didn't want to do it, but because I was scared. And so what I was like, well, I have to like tackle this speaking thing. I need to tackle this camera thing. So I went all in, and just went, shit, okay, I got to do this. If anything, this is proof that you can actually just eventually, if you just keep going, you can get there. Like, I was fine with a workshop in a work setting, But if it was anything that was like my own stuff, my own work, I was fucking terrified. Okay. Like business is easy. Workshop's easy. Um, but the actual putting myself out there properly with real IP and that sort of stuff, I found that was a block. So I was like, okay, I've got to fucking do this. So I set up my first video. It was like, it was basically about brand yourself, it was so bad. I should actually revisit some of this stuff because some of the concepts in it were good, but I wasn't really there. And this culture wars thing, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to work. It's a never-ending source of content. So I was like, yeah, let's talk about some of this stuff. And then I started to just, watch more YouTube because I didn't really watch a lot of YouTube even. Like I was busy. So again, I was just more, oh yeah, I'll watch what others are doing, see what they're talking about. Fell into, watching some Joe Rogan and watching a few other things, watching this whole thing unravel. And this was, post-Trump. And I was like, no, nothing's changed. I was just like, this is weird. It's like I'm in upside down land. So then I started working through that. And I think you'll see through the history of my videos that there's been moments where I was just like, okay, this isn't right. But but again, because I was a bit afraid to say stuff because I was like, I don't think this is fully true. But I fell into the whole, oh, well, I've got to build an audience thing. And I was like, nah. 6 months, I think 6 months ago, I just went, no, fuck it. Who cares? This is not, it's not for that. You fall into this thing, especially once you hit that 1,000 and you start to get monetized. You go, oh, I could make this my job. And you go, no, because in order to make it your job, you need to just sell yourself out. And it's like, no, that's not what you do. What you do is talk about ideas. And if people want to watch, then they watch. If you want to watch this, then you can watch it. So Dead in the Dam, never developed extrovert skills in meat space. Find it much easier online where I can absent myself with a mouse click. Yeah, and I think that, I don't know if you're an old school internet person, but I think, like I said, where they changed the deal on us, I think that's what a lot of us feel, which was that the internet was that sort of escape hatch from meat space and from all of the fucking extroverted idiots in bikinis. And then the extroverted idiots in bikinis fucking crashed our internet. And that's sort of, I think there's a real colonized thing there where we were colonized by extroverts. And we demand reparations. Or at least an explanation or an apology for the whole thing, But I don't think that'll come. Hang on. Cack up my mouth. Feels a bit gross. Hang on. Anyway, I didn't end up answering any questions, but I was just chattering away. But it's what was I talking about? Yeah, it's challenging knowing sort of where you fit, and the fact that I'm 42, nearly 43 in April. That you go, fuck. Do people ever figure out like where they fit in life, or are some people just doomed to never fit in and never accomplish anything? And I've just become more mindful of the fact that I'm not only, not elite, so to speak, but I'm also a woman. So the odds of being heard are already against me. I'm being reasonable, so the odds are against me still. Well, I like to think I'm being reasonable. As charitable, I try to be as charitable as possible. Obviously, you got to make jokes and shit, but that's the conflict, is that there's this necessary framework that you've got to operate in. It's like a real chicken and the egg thing, isn't it? Like this framework of bullshit that you have to exist within. But in order to fight it, you have to exist within it. But you're trying to fight it, but you're feeding it. It's like the whole patron model or the subscription model. And it's like, well, I've always opposed that because it's like, well, I don't want people who are struggling and ordinary to give, ordinary money. And it's like, I don't want to take money from people who can't afford it. I want to take money from fucking rich people. But the problem is you got to suck rich people's dick to get money. And it's like, where can I find some rebellious rich people who like actually just give a shit about the truth and ethics? And it's like, they're few and far between. Because they've always got a political interest in like the status quo. It's interesting. It would be good if someone saw my value within the marketplace of ideas. As somebody, I'm quite happy to fight this shit from the left, and I can bring it. And I think that's another reason why I'm not. I don't think it's necessarily because of who I am. Yeah, I tend to burn bridges and shit. But look at Posey Parker. I mean, I wouldn't say that she's necessarily, but she says the right things, okay, and she serves the right power, and I wouldn't compare that. But I can bring this stuff from the left. I can't be nudged to the right. I can't. It's just not who I am, because politics is principles, and I don't have those principles. I'm not reactionary. I like to hear people out and see different sides and hear different arguments and go, okay. And I'm okay in not knowing things and going, yeah, agree to okay, I can see it from that perspective. You grew up that way and experienced that. I understand why you feel that way. I feel this way because of my experience. That person feels that way because of theirs. Now, okay, what can we agree on? What's the most palatable common ground that we can find so that society can function? That's always been the way that I see things. And so that's unpopular to the people who are incentivized to operate in the gaps, which is capitalism. Like capitalism is about the grift and the gap and the, staying ahead of the regulations. And that's what the internet has been, which is, again, that's what I'm saying with the censorship argument. I think it's naive to think that it's possible. What did? I didn't see it. Star it out because I didn't see it. Okay, the Dead and the Dad said it got filtered out of top chat because it has a swear in it. I didn't see it either. That means I didn't see it. Maybe it may have got filtered. Mostly because I had to turn the filters on because there was a point where I was having to deal with some quite unbearable abuse. But most of honestly, since I started not taking sides and being more reasonable, guess what? The troll farms, bot farms, they seem to have gone. Like, I'm being largely left alone, which is good. So I think I've just confused the AI so much that they've gone, fuck it. Which is cool because, these trolls, they pay per interaction. So if you're a lost cause, then they switch you off. So this is, so Dead and the Damned. This is why I'm a bit of a gatekeeper when it comes to gaming. That was where all the nerds like me went and got fucked for being there. Now all the hip kids want in because it's cool and lucrative. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, and it's not just, I think, again, this is where it becomes simplistic, right? Because I want everyone to have a chance, but it's like, I think much like feminism, okay, and much like any kind of thing, you got to really, and I think it's the curse of youth as well, right? And the arrogance and also the entitlement of hustle bros and culture and the overall entitlement of Americans at large, not to generalize, but there is an entitlement in this sort of unique brand of American capitalism and colonization. Is this colonization mindset? I mentioned this in the interview yesterday where I said it's very different watching the culture wars from Australia versus, say, the US and UK, because the US and the UK are empires. Even Russians, okay, or if you're part of an empire, we're kind of in this weird, we're a colony, okay? We were colonized. And yes, even though we came from there, we're not the empire as such. We don't live within this idea that Australia is, dominant. We're in the G8, yeah, but, and we're a good country and we're of strategic interest to the global powers, but we're not under the illusion that we're powerful as a nation. We're not an empire, right? You've got your big powers. You got your UK, US, Germany, Russia, China. Australia just kind of sits there at the arse end of the world, and we have a different perspective on this. So, and I'm not saying, that there's not colonial history here and that I don't come from that, but I'm just saying that there's an entitlement that comes from that, which is that you have the entitlement and that you are the default and that you are somehow the wise one and that you know better. And I know and this is linked somewhat to the gaming thing that you're talking about, which is that if you look at it through the lens of it sort of being colonized by corporations and by media and by mainstream, is that probably that there is a dispossession that occurs. And that's where I think that there needs to be, and again, I'm not conflating the same. I'm just saying they're the same. It's a way where we can relate to an experience that we can't necessarily relate to. I'm more interested in analogies. They're not comparisons. They're analogies that help people empathize and understand each other, which is that when you have something taken from you by someone else, okay, and then they determine what your identity is, and that's where Gamergate is interesting, because I've, gamer sons and boys, and my son is, he's one of the wisest, fucking funniest people I met, but the system lets him down, and I'd like to be able to get him set up so that he can do his best thing. But because I'm a big fan of everyone just doing what they love and the rest figuring it out. But what happened with Gamergate is that there's no acknowledgement, which is that they just these corporations and everyone moved in on something that was a uniquely nerdy space. Okay. And I empathize with this because I was in that subculture sort of on the periphery, but I wasn't part of. I've always been a casual gamer. I played World of Warcraft, Quake. I'm an Unreal Tournament fan. I played the original Unreal. I played all these things, right? I will answer you in a minute, Judith, with the Jack question, because it's an interesting question. But I think that what needs to, and this is where I find it very interesting, that colonization as a concept is another thing, another distraction that is used in this sort of psyops weapon, around gender. Because, the gender thing is obvious what that is. That's obviously a way of sort of depersonalizing, decoupling us from our own biology, our own sense of identity and all those sorts of things. So that's an obvious thing, okay? Race is another obvious thing, because these things, gender, race, they stop us and distract us from thinking about class analysis. But with this colonization language, okay, what I find interesting about this woke conversation, and wokeism in particular, and I'm only calling it that because that's what everyone else calls it. I try to prefer not to, but whatever. But this unique psyop that is wokeism as a sort of designed tool weapon that's not organic, because it doesn't behave organically. It behaves like a designed product, like a ready, set thing. It works perfectly, which is how you know probably the difference between a marketing campaign and something that again, you can tell when something is made viral versus something that is organically viral. Okay, you can tell the difference if you're trained in this stuff like I am. You can spot the difference. Now, this is why it looks like a product, which is that it's interesting to pay attention to what is what the call to action is, what the takeaway is, and where this shift in language is. And so this language around colonization, while yes, one is to avoid, the very uncomfortable conversations around dispossession and, injustice and the real uprising and the real debt that we owe, Indigenous people around the world, but also to decouple it and make it so that you can't talk about when, say, womanhood is colonized, or when capitalists exploit, because colonization is ultimately imperialist, hegemonic, dominant. It's that kind of act. And what it is because it's a product of an imperialist, dominant, capitalist, patriarchal culture. This wokeism stuff comes out of the United States. It's attractive to other empires. What it does is it's a thought-terminating cliche that stops us having a broader conversation about dominance and how it feels to be colonized and how it feels to be dispossessed and things taken from you without your consent. And that applies to the internet. So for Gamergate, this is where let's think about this. I'm flying free with my thoughts. I'm just having a thought, which is that with Gamergate, I think that became a convenient, again, I'm not saying it's deliberate. I'm just saying it's just maybe a different way of looking at it. But it became convenient to accuse the Gamergate guys of just being racist and sexist and all of those things, because then they couldn't speak about their own dispossession, and they were sort of unable to talk about what was taken from them, because it became then a competition about who's lost, what have you lost? Nothing. It's actually about us taking what we want and getting what we deserve and claiming what's ours, which again, that's what this inclusion and diversity is basically a takeover. And again, there's some legitimate stuff there, but again, it's borrowed from legitimate grievances, but it basically is just a new excuse or way to just take a toy from people that they want. You get the bully in the playground that goes, I want that. Yink. And then if you say no, then you get cast as the bully because you won't share. Remember that when you were 3? It feels a bit like that, right? Yeah, theft is probably the word. But I don't think it's theft necessarily, because like technically everyone can play video games and they can create new markets. But where it was colonized was that it became, what it did is it supplanted gamer culture, replaced it, and then determined what gamer culture was, which was, they said that it was sexist and racist and misogynistic. And what they did was they problematized every aspect of gaming culture, so that that identity was gone and stripped. So that in order, like I see this with my sons. I'm like, no, I'll defend them to the ground. This is just gamer culture. They talk shit. My toes curl, telling my son, like, that's just how they talk. It's fine. Right. So anyway, Dead and the Damned, it's more the corpo hustle. They don't care about the medium, just the bottom line. Wokesters are the same to them. Gaming is a propaganda tool. Gaming is meaningless. Yeah, it's a tool, and it's a tool of well, again, this is how you know that this is largely probably psyop and propaganda, is that it goes after cultural assets. And gaming was not a cultural asset until it became convenient and popular and billion-dollar business. It became a billion-dollar business. It was the thing of nerds. It was niche. And then it gets an audience and it's compromised. And that's what I was talking about with Harry Potter and these fandoms, which is that, they're only really targeted once there's an audience. And once there's an audience, that means there's going to be someone who targets that audience, right? It's the same thing. But now they're doing it for political purposes. And but that's what sort of changed, is that now it's done with micro communities. So like communities of like 1,000 people, and it's just done across the board everywhere. That's what Facebook micro-targeting has done, which is that any community that if there's people in a community hanging out, there will be one. It's wokeism or this political culture war shit, okay? If there's a group of 5 people hanging out, there'll be someone with fucking MLM or Tupperware fucking trying to break into that conversation and sell them shit. And whether that's political or whether that's, a product or whether that's anything, there'll just be someone who wants to see that group of people buy their shit, okay, or buy their bullshit, depending on, whether it's politics or not. But so Judith asked me, if Jack gave you a chunk of dough, would you take it? The answer is, if it was Jack the individual who was trying to change course and wanted ideas and was feeling shit, yeah. If it was an appointment on behalf of the board that has Salesforce and all of those people in it, no, probably not. Unless it was something like, okay, how do we really genuinely fix this problem? I've been hired by these by companies before, and they don't want to hear it. I end up fighting with them, and they go, no. I've talked about this before. I end up fighting, it's like, and then I end up. Then the perception is that I'm difficult, and the perception is that I'm like not delivering on promises or whatever, when it's actually, like I go, no, you got to change. And they go, no, you got to tell us how to change in a nice way that doesn't require us to actually change. That's what diversity and inclusion is. That's what all these people, that's why all the worst people are there, because only the people who don't really care about diversity and inclusion are working in it. Because I know what it's like to consult with executives on fundamental transformative change. I've been working like digital transformation for years and years and years. I know they don't want it. They want to buy an app that will just transform their business. It doesn't work that way. And that's why most people who are actually into diversity and inclusion, they either try to just chip away at it, or they're in these positions and they're toothless, right? And they just hold these workshops and shit that are just pointless. And then that's why this woke shit is a get out of jail free card for everybody. Yeah. So I can't remember if I said anything, but how long have I been going for? It's been a while, 2 hours. Oh my God. But yeah, so but yeah, that's sort of where the tension is for me. But I'm going to try and just do. I guess there's that model of like $5 a month newsletter. It's not you. There's a couple of things. Again, that needs to scale. I can't, like the numbers. I need to get 1,000 subscribers for that to even, well, actually, yeah, with taxes and expenses and stuff. Yeah, probably first goal's 500 or 100, then 500, and then 1,000. But, again, like I'd rather have 3 clients paying $1,000 than 1,000 people yelling at me over $5. It's just one of the, it's just one of those things. But I'm trying to just figure out that balance, which is where I'd rather just make everything free for everybody, and then have the audience, and then like someone who's likes my ideas sponsor me and pay me a fuck ton of money because they believe in what I'm saying. But I don't know whether I don't think that that's necessarily realistic at this point. As much as I just don't support the right forces. I fight against them. And no one's invested in addressing these problems in a real meaningful way. So that's kind of the problem. But that's fine. My husband works for a billionaire philanthropist. But don't they all? Everyone does these days. If you work for a big corporation, ultimately that's where you work, so it's fine. But he's on the good side of things, so that's good. But it's yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to. He's still a worker. He has no influence. So I sit there going, "Can I get an intro? Can I get?" It's like, nah. You can't get it. You don't get access. They're just, they're still just a big department. But it's yeah. Anyway, I'm figuring it out. I'm going to go work on that stuff right now. I'm going to go work on my website and all that sort of stuff. And yeah. Any other questions? I was going to look at the questions. Actually, I'm going to try. Hang on, let me just try and log in because I'm avoiding doing the fucking actual work. Hang on. We're all peons. What does that mean? What's the word? What does peon mean? I never heard that word before. I don't know. Hang on, I should Google it. Is that like plebs? Is that kind of like pet plebs or? Yeah. But it's not, I appreciate it, but it is actually, that thing where it just feels icky to be taking. See, this is what I'm saying about these people in the culture wars, right? These culture wars types. How do they reconcile? Like, how do Brett and Heather Weinstein and those people, how do they reconcile taking people's money right now? Like, I don't understand it. Like, I go, isn't it like, especially with the kind of, denial and, this stuff, taking people's money when they're suffering, it feels exploitative. And I don't know how, and it feels icky taking money from people like that can't afford it. And I also feel really bad that people feel bad that they can't. And I don't like that because I just want to make my information accessible. But, at the end of the day, I've got to learn, I've got to live. So it's just a really tricky problem because ethics, unfortunately, stand in the way of actually, this is like the thing about, that's the thing about capitalism in general, is that capitalism gives you a free pass ethically to go, no, that's just it's the right thing to do. Like, that's the free market. They're just, it's like, well, no, that's not, if you don't have equal power, then no, you're rationalizing again, right? Rationalizing the exploitation of people. How do people, I don't feel right about it, as much as I appreciate it. I'm not going to sit there and if you can't afford it and you want to join, I'm going to let you in. I'll gift you a membership. It's not why I do things. And I think it feels like a naive thing, but I don't know, it feels like the last stand, like, as well, to an extent, and it's like, oh, look. So I actually finally got into my Trello. Oh yeah, it is voluntary, and that's the thing. But I also it feels icky asking, because it's just something. Again, it's just doesn't feel right, because again, it's just part of that whole model that, and I appreciate it and I'm grateful and I think it's fantastic. But it's like, how do you stop feeding the beast, but feed the beast, but then how do you live? And like, this is that big fuck you that's capitalism, right? Really, at the end of the day. But then you've got all these people who they don't have any trouble. They don't feel bad if they cancel someone. I said on the panel yesterday, I was like, I feel bad if I have to send food back in a restaurant. Like, how could you sleep at night knowing that you destroyed someone's career? How do they sleep? I get upset when I get a bad email that even sounded a little bit grumpy from a client, right? It's like, but how do people like when you're making money off the back of other people? And like an example of a big famous podcast that grew great guns, but I helped them and I gave them a discount, but then they just like a very, very big discount. But then when I was like, hey, this was a discount, blah, 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 they were like, oh, well, that's the market. That's the free market. I paid your invoice. It's like, no, that's not the point. I helped you out. There was a sort of thing here where you grew and then you started lecturing me about how to grow and you go, hang on, that mindset is fucked, which is that I did you the favor, not the other way around. And like, it's just a bizarre kind of fucking setup where you've got to be willing to cross an ethical line in order to survive. And it's a line that I won't cross. And it sucks. And I know that choosing not to cross that is an immense privilege, but I suffer for it. I have no financial independence. Like I don't like, I've always made my own money, always been independent. And like my husband supports me, right, for the most part. So I just find it like that not many people talk about this stuff because they don't want to be perceived to be like unsuccessful, or there's this whole, again, it's that whole my fake it till you make it thing, but it's not like that. It's actually, it's a lot of work. But also just this structure is set up so that, they use Fiverr. So they'll use someone offshore for $2, that I won't exploit offshore labor. I won't ask people to work for free. That was another reason with the digital agency why we couldn't compete, was because I refused to use unpaid interns. I was like, if I want you to work, I will pay you and the client will foot the bill. Like but unfortunately, so many agencies are using unpaid interns that you went and cheap offshore labor that it's a race to the bottom, and it's the same problem. And that's the thing where with these YouTubers where they just ask for free shit all the time from people, and they ask for help and they ask for all this stuff, and it's just take. And there's no real conversation about what it takes to produce content. And there's no real conversation about the fact that most of the guys that are successful are saying certain narratives, and they're obvious propagandists, and that they are also they're double dipping. I've said this before, where they're kind of taking money from the top end, but also taking money from the bottom end, but not necessarily, they're not really thinking like this. They don't have a problem with, they think that this is okay and normal, and that they're not feeding the same beast, and that they benefit from the thing that the monster. They're very much part of the power. Like, if you want to know what it feels like to not be powerful, look at me, my Twitter account, no influence. Okay, and like, as I love that we get to talk to each other, but at the same time, it's not really, it's not lucrative to be telling the truth or be honest, because there's that stopper in you. There's that thing that goes, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's right. I shouldn't ask people to help me. What I should do is learn how to do it myself. Like, I could have asked for an editor or a producer to come, an intern to work for free. No, I won't do that. I will learn how to edit, and I can absorb my own labor, but I'm not going to exploit someone else. I don't think that's fair. And, I just don't like that mindset that capitalism puts on you, which is that it's okay to do that. Because time is the one thing that people have, and like, I shouldn't be profiting from someone else like that. And that's why, a lot of the people that give me money on fixed incomes or pensions or, the fixed salaries and, and everyone is in so much fucking hurt and pain right now. And it's just like, I'm not going to ask people like that for money. It doesn't, it bothers me. It bothers me that it doesn't bother everybody else, if that makes sense. I appreciate it very much, but I feel guilty as fuck. I'd rather just go, no, how about I do a workshop for $5,000? The best way you can help me is to say this chick should do a workshop or a speech and you should pay her as consulting, because then I can just make everything else free. And that's good. But, that's once I get all the resources and everything up, I think that'll be fine. If James Lindsay can do it, then I can do it. But again, I'm not peddling fucking rhetoric. So it might be a little bit more, I don't know, I'll find my place. Because there are genuine people out there who genuinely do want to make change. And I have had opportunities to talk for some pretty big companies if I have a product together, because I happen to know, I know a lot of people. I know people who work in like diversity, and I know people in big companies, big brands that you would know, and even woke brands. And I've had a couple who are working in diversity and inclusion, and they're actually hurting for someone like me to come in and go, hey, how do we do this the right way, the proper way? And they actually want me to go in and fucking tell them what's what. I think people are actually hurting for it, because, they can't necessarily do that themselves, but they can have someone at a keynote and they can have someone to go, hey, you're not doing the right things. You're serving the power that you're trying to help. Like they love that shit, but they do it over drinks and at a conference, not in the boardroom. You see what I'm saying? So getting into that space would be really cool. I'm just trying to, I've got a lot of things to figure out. I'm just figuring out your place is easy if you're willing to compromise on your ethics and just do what sells. Like a big part of online marketing is finding a niche, but a big part of finding a niche is looking where no one else is doing it. Now, I don't think anyone else is doing what I do, but I also don't know if there's a market. So, and the thing is that's the problem is that there's several things that you can do in a niche, but they may or may not be a market. And so that's where that takes trial and error. It's taken me like a long time of trial and error to figure out like what my market is. And it's not in building tech. Fuck that. But it's not but I can also only do what I can do. I can't just go and get $1 million funding and go, I'm going to set up a not-for-profit on this, and like I don't have the resources. So I do what I can do with my skill set on any given day for me without asking for free help or asking for anything, and hope that people believe in it and someone sees it and goes, here, we think you'd help us and we think that you've got something to say and we believe in you. And then, that I always, again, I have that blind faith that in people, that if you build it, they'll come. And if I do what I care about, eventually that's always worked out for me, which is just we're operating with integrity. I think you go through a process where you gather up a following of the wrong people, and then you have to go through that. It's like a divorce, when I don't know if anyone here has been through a divorce, but you it's an opportunity to kind of get rid of sort of the friends, and you figure out what you get more centered. You get a sense of your priorities, and these big life things and these big changes often result in greater growth. I've always believed in that. Come back full circle, which is that every time I've sort of done the scary thing, that things have worked out better in the long run. And I think that it's the same thing with the internet. I think that on a broader level, we're just there's a big shock, and we're trying to orient ourselves and figure out what our priorities are. And I think there's a whole generation of people who haven't integrated with this technology, and they're still millennials particularly, trying to figure out how to integrate it. Gen Z don't give a fuck. They figured that shit out. They go, yeah, that's fucking stupid and pointless. I'm just going to watch YouTube shit, right? They use it as a tool, much like, Gen X use it as a tool, but millennials have fucking made it their whole lives because they got on the internet when they were sort of that tween age. So it's a bit different to getting on when you're a little bit older. But Anyway, so I think I'm going to go, but yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. These streams, I have demonetized this channel because again, it's like it's so much admin. You got to file a US tax return, and because I have a company registered. Doesn't make any money, but a company registered. But that's mostly because of limited liability. So that if I write things, as I'm a publishing company. So when I start to publish and stuff, if I fuck up, then at least then, you don't want to publish as a self-employed person. Fuck no. So it's limited liability. But if you want to like earn YouTube money and it's like a few fucking dollars, they roll, they roll like you earn like a few bucks a month, but they take like half of everything anyway, like half of your super chats. So if you've given me a $2 super chat, I get one of those, right? Then that you can't withdraw AdSense money till it reaches $100. And on a smaller channel, it's not much. You only get a few cents per video, and then in order to claim that money, in order to register it, and especially with a proprietary limited company, you need an accountant to go through and fill out like so much forms, which cost you thousands of dollars to get fucking $100. It's not worth it. And it's just not worth the admin or the pain or anything like that. So it's just, I switched it off. I went, fuck it. So it's just all stitched up, who cares? So that's where I just find other sources of revenue. But I'm just figuring that out. So the panel discussion is out tomorrow. I'll tweet it and share it and stuff. It is a 2-hour conversation. I'm not sure if I did okay. I just talk shit for 2 hours. I hope that it came out coherent. I'm sure it did. I usually think that I do worse than I do. But yeah, that should be out tomorrow. Yeah, I'll share it. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go. I'm running out of steam, and I've got to do my website. But yeah, if you've already if Judith is here and Dead and the Damned, you guys will both be invited to the newsletter because you've helped me out. Patrons will help me out. If you're giving me any money, you'll have access. That's my thank you. But also, I think I'm finishing the book soon. I don't think I'm going to make it for January. I was hoping to, but it's just not happening. Unless I do it full time for the next 3 months, I don't think I'm going to get it finished. But I'm going to try. Too many things. But I'm working on it in the background as much as I can. But what was I going to say? Yeah, but when that does come out, depending on what version you're on, whatever, you'll get a free copy of the book and a bunch of other stuff. So eventually, but you'll also get, actually, if you're a member of the site, you'll actually also get to see the draft chapters as they come out, and I'm hoping to get at least a couple of draft chapters out in the next couple of months. They're almost done. So chapter 2 is almost there. And the problem is that they're draft chapters. Like even chapter 1 has already changed because it needs to the overarching story. So getting to see that process, I like to work out loud. I like that process. I find process interesting. But if you just want to wait for the finished product, you can do that too. Yeah. I don't know how to monetize stuff, but I just, I try different things. Well, I do know how to monetize. I just don't know how to monetize in a way that I can sleep at night. They're different things. But if I do put little things in that make me look like a hypocrite, because, they're things that I've weighed up, like subscribe to my newsletter, become a member pop-up, that it has become a necessary, unfortunate fucking thing. I try to avoid dark patterns, but, it's just one of those things. Anyway, so I'm going to go, unless anyone's got anything else. But I did actually look at, so there was the future questions and topics, and it was funny because I wanted to tell about pancreatitis and women being ignored. And so pancreatitis came up, but not the women ignored part. In defense of gaming was one. It was a future. So this was early. This is my original Trello board. We use Evernote. This was very early days. It's interesting to see, actually. The left and right is dead, authoritarian versus libertarian. I said that was 2 years ago. Again, someone claimed that after I said that on one of their shows, and then they didn't put the episode to air and took my shit and fucking started sharing it with everyone else. Lifton's thought reform. bits and pieces. I've done stuff of that. I've actually covered most of this stuff. Explaining what my word about like the word mansplaining and how that was a unintended consequences of moderation, safety, and UX. That was something that I had queued up. Like it's amazing actually going through these questions. I've actually roughly answered them, which is interesting. Anyway, interesting stuff. I find it interesting to see the journey that I've actually, even if I haven't looked at this list in a while, I've actually roughly covered most of it. Hang on, let me just close the fucking tooltips. God, I hate tooltips. Okay. Fuck off. I just want to look at the thing. Thank you. Now, speaking of dark patterns, why are you reloading the board now? Fuck me. Seriously, if you're a user experience designer, it's going through life is very stressful. Very stressful because you see bad design everywhere. It's like, oh fuck. Even with the like professional things. So anyway, what else have I got here? Anything good? I've talked about block lists, questions, curiosity. Is it hate? No. About political homelessness. I've actually mentioned that today. What the fuck is traffic assignment? What the fuck does that mean? I'm really good at making notes. Nah, doesn't look like. Okay. Oh, traffic assignment. Okay, yeah. That's a marketing term. Anyway. And I said, the answer to the dummies on the left is not the dummies on the right. You're still a dummy. My notes are really weird. The Dead and the Damned. I did have a Discord. I had it set up and it became another thing to do. I have a Telegram channel. I can set that up. I prefer Telegram. The only reason why I prefer Telegram is because I use Telegram for everything else. And it's just an easier way to do things. Discord I then ended up having to just maintain another channel, and it just became, and it was good and there was conversation, but the problem is that it just then becomes another thing to moderate. And again, it's just that I'll implement a Discord again at some point, or maybe, but I prefer to use a Telegram channel. I can give you, I think if you message the Telegram thingy that's showing here, there's a Telegram that comes up in this scroll here. If you message that, then actually it's also pinned on my Twitter account thing, that my Telegram is my number. I make everything public. I don't give a shit. You can't dox someone who's open. Because that's the thing. You just what you do is you take away all the incentives, and they don't do it. And that's why it's like there we go, full circle. Take away the incentives, and you get left alone. People, it's like, oh yeah, people lose the challenge. It's like food psychology. Is that? I think you did. I neglect it, Judith. I need to get. I'm just getting to a point where I have people on there. I haven't used it much. I need to get more streamlined, but part of that Telegram is that the API in Telegram, I can actually just push. It's actually a way of subscribing without getting emails as well. So I might set up a subscriber only thing, and you'll get notified, and it will be in there. So it will meet you where you are. I can use the REST API in WordPress to push a notification to Telegram so that you know when I'm live or know those sorts of things. I'm going to start doing. But again, I know what to do, but it's a matter of scale, and it's a matter of sort of, like I said, if there's an audience there, I'll do it. Like you see, like if I'm tweeting to 7,000 people, then I will, right? I do that. I'll go on Twitter, but it's just, I keep just neglecting these things because first of all, you feel like a dickhead when you're like, hey guys, don't you love those like YouTube channels with like, you like those YouTube channels with like 3 subscribers, and they're like little kids and like, hey guys, like this, and it's like you're talking to 3 people, and it's so sweet, but there's like a weirdness to it. So talking to sort of nobody is a bit awkward. Like across because I multi-stream across all platforms, I average about 500 like views across each thing. That peaks and wanes depending on what the topic is. but it's across channels. And so each individual channel doesn't get a lot, but I've just got to automate things so that it's all broadcast and all that sort of stuff and bring it all together. A lot of that is like dependent on me getting this fucking website done. But eventually I will set it up so that you get notified in Telegram. And I do have Discord, but I also just go, oh fuck, another thing to add on. And it's just became another channel where I had to monitor it because people would land in there and then there'd be stuff and then the energy of the room because you'd have the TERFs and trans in there and all the fucking people and then shit goes down and then you end up doing announcements and nobody saying anything and you go, am I shouting into the fucking wilderness on another channel? Everyone's sick of you, Taya. That internal fucking thing that goes off like no one wants to hear anything you've got to say. Because, it's like, as I've said before, those little fucking compliments, those little keep goings, those little replies, those little interactions. I don't need the likes. I don't need like the validation, but a little bit of encouragement does actually stop me from going into that sort of death spiral of what's the point. The thing that drives me is the work and that having the answers and knowing that I'm right and knowing that no one else has quite the same perspective. It was really interesting, the panel, because I think a lot of people don't understand the history of the internet and how fandoms and like digital culture and like a lot of this stuff intersects with political theory, that it's not about the issue. It's actually more about the model and how the internet broke than about anything else. And so I hopefully, if I think that I did okay on this panel, then I may be open to others. I don't seek that out. I want to create some scarcity around my ideas as well, because I worry that I oversaturate myself as it is. I don't want to, again, I don't want to get, I think I just want to be targeted in the way that I do it. And like with TV, because again, I've been on TV, made a fool of myself, and I've gone viral and made a fool of myself, or I've written things that have gone, viral, and they've always been things that I wish hadn't. It's, yeah, and so it's like, it's, and also the thing is, as my son gets older, I can utilize him, but he's autistic and shit, and I'm trying to motivate him, and he might be able to become my producer, but I'm having trouble motivating him at the moment. But he's been offered a job, but it's a lot of this stuff is premature. I only think about it because I've managed other people who are a lot more famous and have a lot bigger audiences than me, that I overthink it and go, okay, I want to make sure that I've got everything right from the beginning, because I have gone viral before and it's been embarrassing. I want to make sure that the next time it happens, or if I'm in a position where I kind of go on something, that it's not embarrassing, and I take that seriously, and I want to make sure that I'm not, that I'm on the right path when I do it, because I've had chances before and I've blown it, and I wasn't ready. And this time I want to be ready. I want to be able to make my case, argue my points, be seen as somebody who is easy to talk to, all of those sorts of things. And that's been what the last 2 years has been, which has been getting up those skills, because interviewing skills is hard, listening skills is hard, monologuing easy for me. This part, easy. Fucking waffling for 2.5 hours, easy part. But, interacting and being a guest and, performance and all of those sorts of things, those are skills. Confidence on getting over the fact that you're talking to an actual camera, all of those things, getting over the lights and, learning to roll with whatever fucking happens. Like a big part of the interaction with chat is actually learning to be okay with whatever chats happen, and if fuckwits show up, just go fuck it and shut it down. Learning boundaries around that. You learn so much. There's so much to learn, and if I go on a bigger, it's not like I don't have access to these things and can't sort of position myself to go on these things or do a blitz or promote myself, or I know like, yeah, PR people, all sorts of people, right? I can get an op-ed anytime I want, but I want to make sure that when I invite people over to the house, that the house is clean, and that, there's nice food, and that, to use a metaphor, that there's, that I'm a good welcoming guest and host and all of those things, and make sure that I'm not attracting and you get what I'm saying. I don't want to make it. It's easy. It's easy to go and say bullshit and rhetoric and put yourself on something where you just try to get their audience, and then they end up dominating your audience. And it's like, no, building an audience is a little bit like building a company, and like culture is important. And I value the few of you that are really cool, and we can have a cool conversation, and because it just takes one fucking fuckwit to ruin all of it, right? And that's the problem, is that, we've seen that like time and time again, where that Oscar guy, or remember when you just come in and just disrupt the whole thing. And it was just very unpleasant, and it stops us, from really interacting. I really want to do Zoom calls for patrons where we just hang out too. I think that would be really cool. But again, a lot of these things are scale dependent, and it's like, I don't want to be scheduling Zoom calls that no one shows up to, because that's my 11th birthday party all over again. I had a birthday party sleepover where no one showed up to my birthday party. I can't deal with that shit. It's like it hurts. It's like re-traumatizing. I'll tell you that story one day. My dad it was because it was a sleepover, and my dad was an alcoholic, and I understand as an adult that I wouldn't put my kid in that situation, but at the same time, my dad was harmless, but Hazard. You remember that song Hazard, where people just accused that guy of killing that girl, and he didn't, right? Yeah, I also live on a death continent at the back end of the world. Yeah. We've fallen. Did you not know? Australia has fallen into, oh, fuck me. Oh, my God. All right. Yeah, we can't be asked. We can't even be asked to be authoritarian. We don't care. It's just funny. Anyway. It's pretty fucking ridiculous. Anyway. But yeah, so I do have plans and ambitions and a strategy, but unfortunately, you know how it's like, your strategy often outstrips your resources, and it also outstrips your audience. And if I'm seen to be going large, you look like a dickhead. If I go, oh yeah, like me just, just phasing, it's more about sort of when I roll things out and I phase things. So I'm going to focus on the newsletter, getting the website done, getting the fucking checkout flow. I need to just put one in. I just need to use the default fucking thing, because I fixate on the user experience and the forms and making all the copy nice, and no one cares about that. But I go, hey, let's do a multi-step, beautiful, engaging Ajax form, and like completely derail the fucking process. You can take the girl out of design, but you never take the designer out of the girl. Can't help myself. But I'm sort of fixating on the members area and the checkout flow. And it's like, no, Taya, just get the fucking thing done. So I'm going to do that today so people can just sign up. That would be nice. And I'm sure the design will get better. Britain fell too, apparently. I didn't notice. Fucking hell. But that's another thing, which is that I think that my newsletter is important, because I think with all the gaslighting and everything that's going on, it's like, I'm not going to claim to be a journalist, and I'm not going to claim to not be biased. But I am going to be claiming to seek truth and seek a more charitable and reasonable explanation for things that, aren't so like fucking henny penny. And in reality, the shit, yes, I think that the United States has gone fascistic. They still have an opportunity to change course. I don't think they will. And we need to sort of start preparing for that and contain that damage. And it looks like they're gunning for war, but I also have hope that most people see what they're fucking doing and don't want that. Because I think we all know that the second that this escalates, it's over for everyone. That if this goes nuclear, it fucking goes nuclear and it's done. And I think, people don't want that. So I have to have an honest and truthful and clear, but still optimistic. I can't black pill. I can't be nihilistic. People are too good, really. They're just in a system that brings out their ugliest. And I just want to start maybe inspiring, because like at the end of that panel yesterday, it started out quite nihilistic, and then we ended it with like you're feeling a bit more hopeful. That if there's easier explanations for this. There's less scary explanations for a lot of this stuff, which is that you can get involved. You can turn up to things. You can, You can just turn off Twitter and go to a local meeting, to whatever party that you want. You can volunteer, get out in the street. You can make new friends that aren't online. You can socialize and, obviously, lockdown dependent and all those sorts of things. But if you, again, you can rationalize all sorts of things. And I just don't think I think that fascism rises in this nihilistic sentiment that things are fundamentally fucked, because that's where that stuff comes from. I see Marxism more as an optimism that things can change. Okay, and it doesn't have to be violent revolution. That's still open to debate. There's reformist, Marxist and revolutionary, but the revolutionary side of it is to defeat. Is it's more that it's an inevitability if you don't address it. I still think we can address it. I still think that that humanity can turn things around if we know our own power and know that these institutions are more robust than they think, know that they have a lot more power than they realize, and know that they don't have to just go along with this fucking culture wars bullshit. They can just say, no, you're all fucking nuts. Get off the internet, read a book. That's not stop doing this. Go find some MLM and go and sell stick-on nails. That does less harm than radicalizing people into politics, right? Yeah, so Dead and the Damned said every generation that lived thought they were living in the end times. Turns out they were all wrong. Yeah. And honestly, okay, and I know that this is a terrible view, but it's a historical one. Even Germany ended at some point. And, history goes on. And I'm not saying that it's okay by any stretch, but I'm saying it ended. And like I said, everything is temporary. It can be horrific and temporary, or it can be, constantly trying to improve and be temporary. And I prefer to hope that we can make it as temporary as possible, and that more people see the writing on the wall, which is that the United States needs to pull their head in and stop being bullies. And, we need to start putting political pressure on them to fucking be a better global citizen. And if China has to do that, then China, I hope that I think that the US have mostly paper tanks, if you ask me. I think that they're just, honestly, I think that they're so fucked. And I think I have a hypothesis that all this defense money that they've so-called spent they're not being spent on anything. I have a feeling that it's all been shuffled off. And that if they were actually called on it, all of that trillions and trillions of dollars over the years has actually fucking gone AWOL, and that they will find that they don't have the resources that they need. That's what I have a feeling might have actually happened, is that it's all just it's somewhere. The money is off in fucking gold ingots somewhere with all these heads of fucking everything, and that they're all just spending money, but it's all just being pilfered. And that really they just have paper tanks and shit, right? And they don't have the resources that they think. I don't know. Again, I like to think that would be funny. And they go to drop a nuke and it's like pop candy. That's how you go. Again, if you're going to go, you may as well go out laughing too. There's no downside to having a positive attitude and hope right to the end. Because I know, okay, what about those old people that they decide? I know many an old person where they get to 65 and they decide that it's over and that they're old now and that fucking life is over. And then they live for another 30 years being miserable and grumpy. And it's like, no, do you know what? My grandma, 86 years old, okay, nearly 87, she'd had a heart attack 4 weeks before. She fucking took off 8 hours, had a heart attack down there. Came back. She's like, no. And I was initially mad at her. I was like, what the fuck? And Paul's like, nah, fuck it. She got to live her life. She's living every minute. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, good on him. Good on her. She should do that. So anyway, you can go to the end fucking, living your life, or you can sit around scared that the end is coming and be miserable and shut in and negative and nihilistic. And I just prefer to always have hope. And it's just, I hope to share some of that. And I think we need more of that, So for the 5 people that I shared hope to today, thank you for watching. I'll get my shit together. This was just a nice catch up. I didn't end up asking any questions, but That's all right. Monologuing's my thing. Anyway, I love you. Thank you for your precious 9 seconds. I'm going to go finish my website. And the panel thing will drop. Well, as soon as it does, I'll retweet it. Feel good, feel better, feel hopeful. It's not that bad. You know, people aren't that bad. You talk to them, you know, even the people who are on, unless you're Frederick Joseph, who's a fucking psychopath, but people shouldn't fucking enable him. That boss needs to get more accountability for aspiring, right? Don't concentrate on the 14-year-old complaining to someone's boss and getting them fired. Complain to the boss for acting on a question from Twitter from a kid. Okay? Don't blame the kid for making a TikTok video and being stupid. Blame the grown-ups that share it. It's like blame the right people. Focus on who's the bull. Once you get clear on who the real, on like the tactics, the behavior, you start to really understand who the victims and who who the real victims are. And the victims are usually clueless people, clueless kids who misread a situation, and there's a whole pile of radicalized, vicious bullies who are like on all sides of this political train. It's not even politics, it's tribal. I wouldn't even give it the credit to call it politics, because it's not how politics works, because politics is about finding consensus. And but they use it to justify bullying children. Fuck off. Use it to justify bullying women, screenshotting people, doxing people, right? Sending, no. I think we just need to just decide enough. Like the old hippies. We just need to be anti-culture wars, like anti-war. We just need to go pacifist. We are not doing this. I will not participate in it. I want people to be better. I'm going to be the hippie because I look like one. But I'm going to be a hippie and say, I don't like any of what's going on. I'm going to go and love everyone. And then I'll die of syphilis. Not literally. Anyway, I love you. Thank you for your precious life hours, minutes, seconds. And I'll share the video and I'll be back tomorrow. I'll probably stream tomorrow. And I'm going to do more conversational shit. But yes, I'm working on stuff. It takes time. This is the easiest way to get ideas out there and have more ideas. And I've had a few where I'm like, oh yeah, I should look about Gamergate and colonization and, the psychology of that, of dispossession, and maybe talking about that a little bit more. Because I love not being controversial, whatever. But pushing through it, ignore them. Just ignore them. Don't let people's flack deter you from having an idea. As long as you're doing it in good faith, as long as your joke is good and you do it with the right intent and the right heart, and you're not weaponizing this thing to and you're doing it with consideration, and all of these things, then say it. Fucking do it. As long as your heart's in the right place and as long as you can back it. So if you are called out on this stuff, like let's say I do a piece on that, okay, on the psychology of dispossession, well, it's like, no, I can back this, okay? And I don't just write things that you can't defend, Oh, yeah, like her. Yeah, that's all right. People have trouble typing my name. That's fine. Thank you. You're welcome. But yeah, I think that just, again, because there's no friction on the internet, we need to insert maybe some of our own, which is hard. It's really hard to do because I'm impulsive as fuck, as you know. But again, we could just try for an ideal. It doesn't mean we're going to get there, but just accept it as an ideal. It doesn't mean that we are that. Like ideology doesn't mean we are that thing. It means that that's an ideal for us. It's a goal. It's what we try to aspire to every day. And I try to aspire to like not giving in to these base, horrible impulses that we all have. And I give in some days and I fail, and I try to be better than I was the day before. And hopefully in the sum of my life, when I've got my hippie syphilis, I've said to Paul, if I get Alzheimer's or something that affects my like cognitive functioning more than I'm already fucking not functioning. But anything that's sort of, like Alzheimer's, I've said to him, I said, you need to, I can end it when it stops being funny, when it starts being sad. I will have a little bit of fucking indignity as long as it's funny and, you can film it and that, people remember that shit as funny. But as soon as that's gone and it becomes sad, like I'm sort of, if you've got your poo in your hand and that's kind of a one-off and it's funny and you're like, Mum put her poo in her hand, that's kind of the point where it's like, that's borderline. But if I'm sort of shitting the bed every day, then it's, it's like, there's context. But it's like, yep, we have an understanding. Euthanasia is legal here. So that's a load off. But, so we can just go, fuck it. I'm choosing my time and I'm out. And I like that. But yeah, so anyway, but, syphilis is another one. So if I get hippie syphilis from being a hippie in the culture wars and pacifist, and refusing to fight and just going, no, fuck it. Let's actually just love each other and try to work through this and, not sell out to any of this shit. And just not participate in this war and hope that it ends as quickly as it starts, because this is a 100-year war now against the left. And I think that at some point you just, you can't contain it, because if Marx is right and the psychology weighs up, people are going to erupt. We get to see we get to see empirical evidence. This is a great psychological, political, let's look at it as a political psychology experiment. So when not exposed to revolutionary ideas and Marxism in a meaningful fashion in your mainstream population, they will still have a revolution. Isn't that an interesting experiment? Like, think of it as like a fascinating thing that we get to witness. Will America have a revolution? Even though they've spent 100 years trying to suppress that. I go, isn't that a more interesting idea than everything's fucked? Yeah, it's kind of scary, but at the end of the day, like, I think that, like, life is what you make it and what you are curious about and what you laugh at, and you go, wow, isn't that fascinating to me to see if this internet thing, whether our brains turn to mush or not, and whether autism is now an ADD or like a protective superpower. And like 20 years from now, we'll see that it was a weird evolution in technology that allowed us to adapt to technology. But it was also something, there's ways to look at things that aren't as stressful. And I think that's why I want to make this thing that's like, I just want to de-escalate and go, oh yeah, maybe we surrender a little bit more. And stop thinking about all of the problems in the world and focus more on like what's interesting about the time we're in right now, which is really fascinating, which is, again, 100 years of suppression of Marx. And yet what you're seeing in the United States is fucking Marx be correct. It's bizarre, isn't it? But it'd be interesting to see what happens. Is revolution, is this innate? Is this hypothesis about capitalism and the way that intersects with psychology, because economics, psychology, and they're all schools of philosophy. They're all linked. They're all sort of sub branches of the same thing. So as an experiment, isn't it interesting to think that like this could actually be empirical evidence that if you observe correctly, that revolution is inevitable, and that class and capitalism inevitably, because of human nature, implodes on itself, and that there's going to be some like that there's a scientific aspect to that which you can observe. Isn't that fucking amazing? I think that's pretty fucking amazing. I'm glad I thought of it. Anyway, so I'm going to go. I love you. Thank you for your precious life seconds. Patrons are going to get cool shit. I'll let you know. I'm working on it. I keep saying it's coming, but I keep fucking around. I'm going to go. Have a great day. Stay sane. I'm going to do crickets. Hopefully so. Did that work? Did. All right. Bye. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.